Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Esmeralda Richiez. Esmeralda Richiez Martinez was born on August 23, 2006, in La Alta Gracia, Dominican Republic, to restaurant owners Alio Rosti and Isabel Martinez. She grew up in a happy and close-knit family with an older sister, and the two were extremely friendly. As Esmeralda grew older, she blossomed into a bright and beautiful young woman. She was passionate about singing, dancing, and showcasing her artistic talents on social media. In her senior year of high school in 2023, Esmeralda, also known as Marala, was a popular and cheerful student who was surrounded by friends. One of her close friends was 35-year-old John Kelly Martinez, a new teacher at her school. John Kelly had recently entered the public education system after passing a competitive teacher's exam and was undergoing a one-year probationary period. He quickly won over his students with his friendly approach, treating them like peers and organizing regular outings outside of school. John, a married teacher and father of two, prioritized his students over his family. He spent most of his free time with them, building trust and relationships. Esmeralda was one of these bright and beautiful students. On the evening of February 12, 2023, John met with his female students, including Esmeralda, outside of school. He picked her up last and introduced himself as her teacher, promising to drive her home afterward. They joined two other men and two female students, and John drove them to the beach in his car. Everyone except John and Esmeralda got out of the car when they arrived. The two of them spent some time alone before joining the others. They drank a few beers and took a short walk along the beach. However, their evening was cut short when Esmeralda suddenly fell ill and started bleeding. They had to rush her back home. The next morning, her parents found her dead. The autopsy revealed that she was murdered, leaving her parents with unanswered questions. The National Institute of Forensic Medicine initially concluded that Esmeralda Richiez's death was caused by a severe internal bleeding and hemorrhagic shock resulting from a perennial laceration. However, following a thorough autopsy, the final classification of her death was undetermined. What led to such a tragic event when Esmeralda was accompanied by friends and a supervising teacher? The investigation shed light on the events. Police interviews with Esmeralda's friends and a review of their phones revealed crucial clues, leading to the identification of a suspect. One of Esmeralda's friends, who had been with the teacher and Esmeralda that evening, provided a shocking testimony. She claimed to have seen the professor secretly add 5 pills to Esmeralda's drink while they were at the beach. The initial police findings sparked widespread speculation in the Dominican Republic, where abortion is illegal. Many theories emerged about the cause of Esmeralda's death, with some believing she died of a heart attack and others speculating that she bled to death due to abortion pills allegedly given to her by John Kelly. The medical examiner's report was expected to put an end to rumors and speculation. However, when the forensic examination results were released, speculation only ceased for a brief moment. Esmeralda's relatives were shocked and skeptical when they learned the results, which ruled out pregnancy. The family was unhappy with the report's conclusion because it contradicted their theory, which was supported by the investigation's findings and evidence. Previously, an examination of Esmeralda's friends' phones had uncovered numerous text messages hinting at the teacher's long-standing interest in the student, but these clues were indirect. After a failed pregnancy, an investigation found that John Kelly drugged a girl without her consent and violently assaulted her on the beach, causing severe blood loss. A few hours later, Esmeralda, died. Toxicology test results were still pending. Based on the evidence, the prosecutor's office requested that John Kelly Martinez and his alleged accomplice, Ruben Murillo Martinez, be detained, as they are the main suspects in Esmeralda's death. As a result, John Kelly Martinez was suspended from his teaching position for 90 days without pay due to the evidence against him. The prosecutor's office also requested that John Kelly be held in preventive detention for a year. as the primary suspect in Esmeralda's death. To clarify, preventive detention is not a punishment for a crime, but rather a measure to prevent the person from committing further crimes while the investigation continues. New investigations, including fresh episodes and eyewitness interviews, have deepened the mystery surrounding the student's tragic death. Despite multiple stops during the journey to tend to her severe bleeding, neither the individuals assisting her nor the entire company took the crucial step of calling emergency services or rushing her to the hospital. Several stops made by the defendants were captured on surveillance cameras. Witnesses reported that they purchased alcohol and that Esmeralda and John went to the restroom together. They also visited a pharmacy to buy medication, water, and feminine hygiene products. It was later discovered that Esmeralda had to change her clothes completely at one of the stops because they were soaked in blood. After Esmeralda was dropped off at home, her parents noticed she was bleeding heavily. Assuming it was related to her menstrual cycle, her mother gave her a painkiller to help her fall asleep. One of Esmeralda's cell phones revealed that she had sent an audio message to a friend in the early morning hours, pleading for help and saying, "Please help me, I'm bleeding." Unfortunately, the friend didn't hear the message until it was too late. The next day, Esmeralda was found unresponsive on her bathroom floor, covered in blood. On February 14th, John Kelly Martinez was arrested, and his home was searched the following day. The clothes he wore on the night in question were seized during the search. Additionally, his cousin, Ruben Murillo, was accused of trying to hide John's bloody pants. The investigation into the event has been plagued by ambiguities. Rather than fueling speculation, the prosecutor's office should have provided clarity on the circumstances surrounding the young girl's death, which had alarmed the public and sparked demands for a thorough and high-quality investigation. Many people felt that the investigation had missed crucial evidence, including a thorough search of the teacher's home and car, which were potential crime scenes. The authorities quickly requested to examine the car, but John Kelly's wife sold it soon after, raising suspicions that she was trying to hide evidence. The car's new owner was Panaga Pillar. Only when the authorities threatened to take action against J.C. Espinal Rowe, John Kelly's wife, and Frank Panaga for their alleged involvement in the case did they finally inspect the car. Although they found traces of Esmeralda's blood, no other significant evidence was discovered. The court decided that there was not enough evidence to keep J.C. Espinal Rowe in jail, so she was released. The investigation continued for several months. The prosecutor reopened the case, re-interviewing the three girls who had been with Esmeralda that night. Their testimony helped investigators piece together the events of that night, minute by minute. At 7:30 p.m., John Kelly Martinez, 35, and his cousin Ruben Murillo Martinez went to Esmeralda's home in La Otra Banda Igay with the three girls in the passenger compartment of the car. John, posing as Esmeralda's teacher, coaxed her away from her mother, promising an exciting evening with her classmates. Initially, the plan was to take the group to an amusement park, but John changed his mind en route and chose a new destination. It's likely that John had no intention of going to the amusement park and instead opted for a quiet evening at Mile Beach. During the drive, John stopped at a store to buy a beer and asked his brother to move to the back seat, allowing Esmeralda to sit in the front. John had a thermos with him, which he filled with beer and secretly added 5 unknown pills. He offered the drink to Esmeralda without warning her about the pills, but one of her friends noticed this when they arrived at the beach. The three girls left the car, leaving Esmeralda alone with John. They spent about 30 minutes alone in the car, which didn't go unnoticed by Esmeralda's friends. Suddenly, John emerged and instructed everyone to get back in the car, claiming they needed to leave urgently. During their journey, they had to make multiple stops due to Esmeralda's heavy bleeding. One of these stops occurred at 9:45 when they pulled into a gas station parking lot. There, Esmeralda visited the restroom in the cafeteria, as confirmed by eyewitness accounts and CCTV footage. Esmeralda's classmate reported that she asked to stop at a gas station because she needed to use the restroom. When Esmeralda went in with her friends, they were shocked to see that her clothes were covered in blood. The restroom was also heavily blood-stained, requiring they to mop the floor. They were frightened and asked the gas station attendant if this was normal, and she told them it was not, and that they needed to take Esmeralda to the doctor right away. They told John Kelly, Esmeralda's teacher, about the situation, but he refused to take her to the hospital, fearing he would be arrested. An investigation later confirmed that Esmeralda's blood was found in the parking lot and restroom at the gas station. Surveillance footage and a receipt also showed that they had stopped at a pharmacy to buy medical supplies, including sanitary pads, at 10:21 p.m. John Kelly eventually dropped Esmeralda off at her home around 11 p.m., but she was still heavily bleeding, having been left alone in the car with him. A subsequent medical report on February 16th revealed that Esmeralda had suffered severe and brutal abuse, resulting in massive blood loss and hypovolemic shock. While this condition could have been treated, Esmeralda never received the life-saving medical attention she needed that night. Esmeralda's toxicology report revealed the presence of a synthetic gestagen, a key ingredient in abortion pills. However, it had already been established that Esmeralda was not pregnant. This substance is taken orally as a contraceptive and works by suppressing ovulation and fertilization. Given its presence in her body, it's likely that John Kelly, her teacher, had planned to engage in intimate relations with her. After a series of medical examinations, Esmeralda's body was finally laid to rest at the Albano Public Cemetery. Her family and friends, including Malala, bid her a sad farewell, remembering her as a kind and cheerful person. Her devastated parents couldn't help but replay the fateful evening in their minds, blaming themselves for trusting John Kelly with their daughter's care and allowing her to go for a walk with him. On June 4, 2023, prosecutors charged John Kelly Martinez, a math and physical education teacher, in connection with the death of Esmeralda Richiez after reconstructing the last hours of her life. 8 days later, on June 12, 2023, the LA Alagia Prosecutor's Office filed an indictment and requested a trial against Martinez and his cousin, Rubiel Milo Martinez, in the LA Alagracia Instructional Court. The trial was initially scheduled for August 23, 2023, but was postponed due to Storm Franklin and rescheduled for November 24, 2023. However, the judge later ordered that John Kelly Martinez be retried as the sole defendant in Esmeralda Richiez's death. The new trial was initially set to begin on January 9, 2024, but was rescheduled again because only half of the witnesses showed up. The trial is now scheduled to take place on February 1st and 6th, 2024, before the Collegiate Court of the Penitentiary Chamber of First Instance of La Altagracia. The defense attorney argued that the prosecution's case relied too heavily on the idea that the victim's parents were responsible for her death, rather than focusing on the actions of the defendant. The prosecution, on the other hand, presented a significant amount of evidence, including witness statements, expert testimonies, and physical evidence, to build a strong case against the defendant. During the trial, the defendant attempted to portray himself as a victim, claiming that his interactions with the victim on the night of her death were consensual. When Professor John Kelly Martinez brought Esmeralda home, she was alive and in good health. However, the court documents reveal that Martinez voluntarily inflicted severe injuries on Esmeralda, including lacerations, abrasions, and contusions, which ultimately led to her death due to acute internal and external bleeding and hemorrhagic shock, as confirmed by the autopsy report. Despite Martinez's statement in court, it had no impact on the judges or the audience. On March 14, 2024, Martinez, 36, was sentenced to 20 years in prison for violent conduct. He will serve his sentence at the Anamuya Correctional and Rehabilitation Center. Additionally, Rubiel Maro Martinez, the defendant's cousin and an accessory after the fact, was given a conditional enforcement measure requiring him to make regular court appearances in Hayward. Following the enforcement measures against Martinez and his cousin, the family's attorney, Raimundo Rosario, expressed satisfaction with the outcome and stated that the family would not pursue further investigation. Esmeralda's mother, Isabel Martinez, regretfully recalled allowing her daughter to walk with the teacher and 3 friends. She had previously spoken to the teacher on the phone, asking if he was a teacher, and he had confirmed that he was. She had trusted him to take care of her daughter, not knowing that he was a danger to her. The Ministry of Education offered support to the families of the deceased girl and the other girls who were with her on the day of the tragedy. They expressed hope that such cases would not happen again in the education community or in society. For the grieving parents, their fight for justice had just begun. A fun evening outing that included a beach visit had turned into a night of terror, resulting in the tragic death of Esmeralda Richiez, who suffered fatal injuries at the hands of the man entrusted with the care of children. Everyone involved in the evening's events bears some responsibility for what happened. Marala, however, was too afraid to confide in her parents due to their extreme strictness. We've all been there, afraid to speak up because we fear punishment or being misunderstood. But in this tragic case, fear triumphed, resulting in the devastating loss of a precious life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Rhonda Casto. Julia Simmons resided with Stephen Nicholas, a divorced day trader, in his 3-bedroom home located outside of Portland, Oregon. Julia initially met Stephen online while searching for a rental property and found him to be charming and nice. During their cohabitation, Stephen met Julia's 20-year-old daughter Rhonda. Stephen, being 10 years older than Rhonda, was immediately smitten with her, drawn to her stunning beauty and captivating personality. As it turned out, Rhonda reciprocated his interest, and they began dating. As their relationship advanced, Stephen and Rhonda became more serious and eventually decided to move in together, with Rhonda relocating to Stephen's condo. During their courtship, Stephen formed a close bond with Rhonda's family, particularly her sisters Melanie and Tessa. Tessa, who was only 9 years old when Rhonda and Stephen started dating, enjoyed spending time with him due to his playful and fun nature. Years passed, and Stephen and Rhonda remained a committed couple, yet they never got married. Rhonda often fantasized about what it would be like to be married to Stephen. Her friends were aware of her strong desire to get married and sensed that she was holding on to hope. Stephen assured her that they would tie the knot in the summer of 2009, according to his plan. After having a baby girl, Rhonda discovered that being a mother became the most fulfilling part of her life. Her daughter became the center of her universe, and Rhonda treasured every moment she shared with her. She was passionate about being a mom and spending time with her daughter. Nevertheless, she also longed to revive her modeling career. As Stephen put it, Rhonda was at her heaviest after giving birth to their daughter. He stated that Rhonda felt self-conscious about her weight. To lose weight, they made a pact to hike the 25 best trails in Oregon together. Stephen insisted that their relationship was thriving, and they rarely had disagreements. He believed that their bond had grown stronger than ever before. Rhonda's friends told a different story, revealing that Rhonda had confided in them about Stephen's abusive behavior. She had previously taken photos of bruises on her back, caused by a fight with Stephen on March 16, 2009, as evidence. However, according to Stephen, Rhonda's behavior changed later on. He claimed that she asked him what would happen if anything ever happened to her and if he would take care of their daughter. Stephen said he replied, "Of course." As the weather worsened, Stephen told Rhonda it was time to head home. But instead of turning back, Stephen alleged that Rhonda wrapped a towel around her shoulders, declared herself Supergirl, and began to run down the narrow, slippery pathway. Stephen stated that he saw Rhonda slip and fall 150 feet down the side of the Eagle Creek Trail. After the fall, Stephen claimed he hiked down to the ravine where she landed because he had no cell phone signal and found her body. Unable to call 911, he had to leave her behind. Stephen then walked to the trailhead, where he finally managed to contact emergency services. Later that day, rescue workers recovered Rhonda's body. Rhonda's family recalls that Stephen showed no emotion at her memorial service. However, Stephen disputes this, saying he cried non-stop, and that when deeply upset, he tends to withdraw and prefer to be alone. After Rhonda's death in 2006, Stephen packed up his and his daughter's belongings and relocated to the other side of Oregon, where his family lived. This sudden move raised suspicions among Rhonda's family, who wondered what had happened between Stephen and Rhonda in the moments leading up to her death. However, Stephen didn't stay in Oregon for long. Later that same year, he made the decision to move to China with his young daughter, marking a new chapter in their lives. Having lived in China during his first marriage, Stephen had developed a deep affection for the country and its people. They settled in Wuxi, a city about 75 miles outside of Shanghai. In China, Stephen found work teaching English to Chinese business professionals. His daughter quickly adapted to her new life, becoming fluent in Mandarin within just 2 months of their move. Both Stephen and his daughter were thriving in their new surroundings. During this time, Stephen met a woman named Landy Yin Yan and fell in love with her. Landy formed a strong bond with Stephen's daughter, taking on a motherly role and filling a gap in the girl's life. Stephen was grateful for Landy's influence on his daughter and appreciated the way she had stepped in to play a parental role. After a year of dating, Stephen proposed to Landy, and to his delight, she accepted. In February 2015, Stephen and his daughter traveled back to the United States, where he and Landy planned to get married. They decided to have 2 wedding ceremonies, one in America and one in China, in order to include both of their families and friends. Stephen and his daughter arrived in the United States a day before Landy did. As Stephen and his daughter stepped off the plane in San Francisco to catch their connecting flight to Oregon, an officer approached him and explained that they needed to detain him due to an issue with his luggage. Shortly after, the police arrived and took Stephen away from his daughter. Unbeknownst to him, while he was living in China, detectives had been diligently investigating his girlfriend Rhonda's death, which had occurred under suspicious circumstances at Eagle Creek. After months of inquiry, they had finally concluded that Stephen was responsible for Rhonda's murder. Rhonda's mother had played a crucial role in keeping the investigation active, frequently inquiring about updates from the detectives. Consequently, the police arrested Stephen at the airport for Rhonda's murder and extradited him to Oregon to face justice. When arrested, Stephen was in disbelief, thinking he was dreaming and hoping to wake up back in China with his daughter Landy by his side. However, he soon realized that this was not a nightmare, but harsh reality. Stephen's bail was initially set at $2 million, and he spent the next 14 months in prison awaiting trial. The judge lowered Stephen's bail to $250,000, and his attorney posted the bond, allowing Stephen to be released on condition that he wear an ankle monitor. Rhonda's family was overjoyed when they learned that Stephen had been arrested for her murder, feeling that justice was finally being served. Rhonda's mother was particularly emotional, bursting into tears when she heard the news. Stephen's arrest brought relief and solace to Rhonda's loved ones, who had been grieving her loss for years. Following Stephen's arrest, his attorney led an investigative team to the Eagle Creek Trail, where Rhonda had fallen to her death. They aimed to conduct experiments to demonstrate to the court that Rhonda's death was an accidental slip, not a push by Stephen. Stephen's defense attorney argued that the Eagle Creek Trail was a popular hiking spot in the Columbia River Gorge due to its beauty. During one of Stephen's preliminary court hearings, the medical examiner who conducted Rhonda's autopsy after she fell from Eagle Creek revealed that all of Rhonda's injuries were confined to the area below her waist. This crucial finding played a key role in shaping Stephen's defense strategy, as it enabled his team to propose the theory that Rhonda had taken her own life. The defense team argued that the force of the impact from hitting the ground was responsible for Rhonda's broken pelvis, and that the evidence suggested she had fallen feet first, rather than tumbling head over heels, which would have indicated that she had not been pushed. In addition to presenting evidence about Rhonda's injuries, the defense team also wanted to use notes from her therapy sessions as evidence. These notes showed that Rhonda was depressed, but she never mentioned wanting to kill herself. In fact, Rhonda had described her relationship with Stephen as feeling loveless. Stephen's defense team argued that Rhonda's depression and her description of their relationship suggested that she might have chosen to end her own life. By presenting this evidence, they hoped to raise doubts about the prosecution's claim that Stephen had pushed Rhonda, causing the injuries that ultimately led to her death. Stephen later stated that Rhonda had been depressed and had attempted to take her own life multiple times before they even met. However, Rhonda's family denied these claims, accusing Stephen of lying. They believed that Stephen was trying to shift the blame onto Rhonda to distract from his own role in her murder. According to Stephen, Rhonda had struggled with drug abuse since she was 12, and he claimed that she had experimented with various substances. However, the medical examiner's report only found small amounts of marijuana and prescription medication for anxiety and depression, which Rhonda was taking due to postpartum struggles. Disturbing evidence came to light during the preliminary hearings, revealing Stephen's involvement. It was discovered that Stephen had been in a romantic relationship with Melanie, Rhonda's 16-year-old sister. This revelation raised concerns, as Stephen was in his 30s and Melanie was still a minor. The prosecution argued that Stephen's inappropriate relationship with Melanie could have been a motive for Rhonda's murder, as Rhonda had found out about her husband's secret actions, leading to tension and a possible reason to kill her. After Stephen was arrested for Rhonda's murder, he was charged with 2 counts of third-degree sexual assault and 3 counts of third-degree sodomy regarding his relationship with Melanie, his girlfriend, and Rhonda's sister. While awaiting trial for Rhonda's murder in 2005, Stephen admitted to 2 counts of sexual abuse. He later claimed that he was pressured into making the admission and that it was false, stating that the only reason he pleaded guilty was to regain custody of his daughter. However, the prosecution maintained that Stephen's relationship with Melanie lasted over 4 years. Later, Stephen confessed to having a sexual relationship with Melanie, Rhonda's teenage sister. In a text message, Rhonda called Stephen a piece of garbage and accused him of using Melanie to hurt her. Rhonda's mother testified that Rhonda knew Stephen was trying to create a rift between her and Melanie, and that Rhonda loved her sister and wanted to mend their relationship. The state argued that Rhonda and Stephen's relationship was troubled. The court was presented with evidence of Stephen's deviant sexual past. 6 months after Rhonda's death, Stephen was arrested and charged with 5 counts of sexual abuse for allegedly touching a 13-year-old girl. Initially, Stephen denied the allegations, but later admitted to sending the girl a sexually suggestive text message and a shirtless photo, acknowledging the inappropriate nature of his actions and pleading guilty to 1 count of sexual harassment. During Stephen's preliminary hearings, the state submitted photos of Rhonda's bruised back, taken by Rhonda herself, as evidence. Rhonda's best friend testified that she had witnessed the couple fighting on multiple occasions and frequently heard them arguing in the background. Additionally, Stephen's ex-wife took the stand, alleging that he had attempted to suffocate her and throw her over the railing of their apartment in November 2003, although he was not charged with a crime related to this incident and denied the claims. Rhonda's family is convinced that her boyfriend, Stephen, is responsible for her death, believing he murdered her to collect on a life insurance policy he had recently increased. Rhonda's mother has expressed her suspicions, pointing out that Stephen had lost a large amount of money through day trading the previous year and was struggling financially. Moreover, all who knew Rhonda can attest that she loved her 9-month-old daughter deeply and would never have taken her own life. Despite the lack of physical evidence linking Stephen to Rhonda's murder, the state still believed he was responsible for pushing her off the trail at Eagle Creek. However, the weakness of the case led to a compromise between the state and the defense. Stephen pleaded guilty to the lesser charge of criminally negligent homicide, and in return, he received credit for the time he had already spent in custody awaiting trial. He was sentenced to 3 years of parole, after which his ankle monitor was removed and he was finally released. Rhonda's family and friends were unhappy with the outcome, feeling that Stephen should have faced more severe consequences for his actions. At the sentencing hearing, Rhonda's sister delivered a powerful impact statement, conveying her anger and frustration towards Stephen and emphasizing the devastating impact he had on their family. Rhonda's mother also spoke, expressing her confusion and frustration, and struggling to understand how Stephen could have taken her daughter's life, leaving their family in shattered remains. In a 2018 interview, Stephen made a shocking claim about Rhonda's death. He said that when he hiked down Eagle Creek Trail on the day she fell, Rhonda was still alive. Stephen then asked the interviewer if killing a suffering war buddy could be considered a justified killing, even though it would still be considered a homicide. Although Stephen did not directly admit to harming Rhonda, his comments hinted that he might have been involved in her death. In 2017, Rhonda's mother filed for Social Security survivor benefits for her infant granddaughter, stating that the child lived with her and promising to use the benefits only for the baby's care. However, the state accused Rhonda's mother of misusing the benefits from April 2010 to December 2014, while Rhonda was still alive. Rhonda's mother was charged with stealing nearly $40,000 in government funds over a 5-year period. Her defense team argued that she committed the crime to prevent her son-in-law, Stephen, from gaining custody of Rhonda's daughter. They claimed that her actions were motivated by a desire to protect her granddaughter from exploitation. According to the defense, Rhonda's mother had struggled with depression, which worsened after her daughter's death. To cope with her grief, she turned to marijuana, which clouded her judgment and impaired her ability to think clearly. Rhonda's mother, 53, pleaded guilty to the theft and was sentenced to 1 month in a halfway house and 3 years of probation. She was also ordered to pay back the stolen benefits, totaling $39,100. Rhonda and Stephen's daughter had been in foster care since October 2015, when the Department of Human Services took custody of her. This decision was made after Stephen pleaded guilty to sexually abusing a 13-year-old girl. As a result, an Oregon court terminated his parental rights, although Stephen appealed this decision. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Rebecca Gould. Rebecca Gould was born on April 28, 1982. She became a victim of a terrible crime. Rebecca grew up in a family that went through a painful divorce, leaving her and her 3 sisters under their mother's care. Despite remaining connected with their father, the challenging family situation toughened Rebecca, strengthening her bond with her sisters, especially Danielle, her closest companion. In pursuit of a better life and education, Rebecca left her hometown to settle in Fayetteville, a larger city in Arkansas. There, she enrolled in a community college, working part-time while studying hard. The aspiration for a university degree motivated her. Danielle joined her in Fayetteville, and they supported each other in their shared apartment. During a visit home, Rebecca met Casey, with whom she began dating despite the distance since Casey lived in Melbourne. They seemingly had a harmonious relationship, spending time together with family, making plans for the future. However, trouble lurked, unbeknownst to them. On a September morning in 2004, Rebecca drove Casey to work. After grabbing breakfast, she returned to Casey's house for some rest before heading back to Fayetteville. Little did she know, these moments of peace would be her last. Meanwhile, Danielle awaited her sister's return, unaware that she would never show up. Later, realizing Rebecca's absence, Danielle began searching, only to confront the harsh reality. Rebecca had vanished without a trace, marking the start of a mysterious and tragic chapter in their town's history. Danielle decided to go to the police. She called the local sheriff's department and reported that her sister had been missing for almost 24 hours. The police immediately began collecting information and questioning potential witnesses. The first person they decided to interrogate was Casey. After all, he was the last person to see Rebecca alive. The detectives visited the restaurant where Casey worked and began asking him questions. Casey repeated the same thing he had told Danielle. He had spent the night at a friend's house, and in the morning, he went straight to work, assuming that Rebecca had left town with her sister long ago. Despite Casey having an alibi, the police felt some unease. It seemed strange that Casey had left his dog, which required constant attention, to fend for itself. So why did he decide to spend the night at a friend's place on the eve of his girlfriend's departure? These questions wouldn't leave the detectives alone. The police thoroughly examined the house where Casey lived with permission from him. Rebecca was last seen there, and her car was parked in the yard, increasing the suspicion. Inside, there was a persistent smell of bleach, seemingly used to hide evidence of an event. Rebecca's belongings were all in place, including her purse, wallet, phone, and recently bought breakfast. Her small Pomeranian dog wandered aimlessly in the messy room. The detective's attention was drawn to the bedroom. The bed was messily made, and the sheet was crumpled and overturned. Some of the bedding was found in the washing machine with bloodstains on it. Under the mattress, even larger bloody stains were hidden. Forensic analysis confirmed the blood belonged to Rebecca. Suspicion instantly fell on Casey. The amount of blood found indicated that a brutal murder had taken place in the house. However, Casey had an ironclad alibi. Several witnesses had seen Rebecca personally drive him to work on Monday morning. Then, between 8:30 and 4:30, Casey had been constantly present at the restaurant. Security cameras recorded his friends picking him up in a car after his shift ended, and then the company headed to the movies, as evidenced by surveillance footage at the cinema and store receipts. It seemed that Casey had a perfect alibi for the time of Rebecca's disappearance and probable murder. However, the police could not dismiss him as a suspect. Everything they had seen in the house seemed too strange. Many questions remained. If Casey was innocent, then who attacked Rebecca? Why were her things left undamaged? Where did the perpetrator go, and where was Rebecca's body? The investigators felt that the key to unraveling this sinister mystery was somewhere very close. They didn't yet realize that the answers to all the questions would turn out to be far more terrible than they could have imagined. And Melbourne would soon shudder at the news of one of the bloodiest and most mysterious murders in the town's history. A week had passed since Rebecca Gould's disappearance, and the police were still struggling to make progress in the case. Every new lead seemed to end in a dead end. However, on a gloomy September 27th, shocking news arrived. A passerby discovered the body of a young girl, brutally mutilated and discarded in a shallow ravine outside Melbourne. The police promptly responded to the scene, conducting a thorough investigation for clues and evidence. Despite the severe condition of the body, it was relatively easy to identify the victim as Rebecca Gould. She was found wearing the same clothes she wore when last seen alive. An autopsy revealed that she had died around 7 days prior, on September 20th, the same day she dropped off Casey at work before disappearing. The coroner discovered severe injuries on Rebecca's body, including bruises, a broken nose, and a fractured skull. Of particular note were 2 wounds on her head from powerful blows with a blunt object, which were likely fatal. These injuries matched the shape of a missing piano leg from Casey's house, leading the police to suspect it was used as the murder weapon. However, The leg itself could not be found nearby. Other details from the autopsy also indicated the shocking brutality of the crime. Just when it seemed that the case would remain unsolved, an unexpected development brought hope. A man who had listened to a podcast about Rebecca's death came forward with valuable information. The anonymous witness called the police to report a confession he had heard, which could potentially solve the mystery of Rebecca's death. According to the man, several years ago, he had worked together with Casey, the victim's boyfriend. Once, after a few drinks, Casey had allegedly blurted out that it was he who killed Rebecca. The witness did not immediately believe the seriousness of these words, attributing them to drunken fantasies. But later, having learned the details of the case from the podcast, the man decided that he could not remain silent. The detectives working on the case initially treated this statement with skepticism. Firstly, many years had passed, and memories could have faded or become distorted. Secondly, at the time of the alleged confession, he and Casey were under the influence of alcohol. But what was most alarming was that during all this time, the witness had never mentioned this conversation and had not contacted law enforcement. Why did he decide to speak up only now? Moreover, the witness and Casey's relationship was not friendly. Casey had started an affair with his former co-worker's wife. The witness might have confessed to seek revenge, slander his rival, and cause legal trouble. Alternatively, alcohol might have made Casey reveal too much. Investigators considered both possibilities as potentially true. Despite all the doubts, the police could not simply dismiss this testimony. The accusations were too serious. This is the opportunity to finally unravel the tangle of mysteries surrounding Rebecca Gould's death. So the detectives took up the old case again, hoping to find at least some clues that would confirm or refute the words of the unexpected witness. After over a month of thorough work, the investigators revisited Rebecca's relatives, friends, and neighbors, along with her boyfriend. They carefully reviewed the statements, gathered testimonies, and verified alibis. Despite their efforts, they kept circling back to the initial point. The evidence against Casey was insufficient, and his alibi for the day of the crime appeared solid. However, seasoned detectives had a hunch that the answer was within reach. They sensed that a crucial piece was missing to solve the puzzle and bring closure to this tragedy. All that was left was to locate it. Afterwards, the investigators chose to shift their focus. They started to meticulously examine everyone who had interacted with Rebecca and Casey around the time of the murder. They paid special attention to details about William Miller's visit, Casey's cousin, who had briefly visited town right before Rebecca went missing. Initially, during the investigation, William was not a significant figure, and the investigators had already interviewed him. He had mentioned casually passing by Casey's house, where he saw Casey and stopped to greet him. There was nothing unusual or suspicious about the encounter. Detectives are now reconstructing events minute by minute, and William's role is starting to become clearer. This is mainly because shortly after Rebecca's murder, he left the United States and moved all the way to the Philippines. This sudden distance from family and familiar surroundings seemed quite odd. Unfortunately, William's location in the Philippines made it impossible to question him. Since the Philippines didn't have any relevant extradition agreements with the US, it was unrealistic to bring him to Kansas for further investigation. The only hope now is that William will decide to return to the US on his own and come into the view of law enforcement. During the search for Casey's missing relative, journalists investigating the Rebecca Gould case established a social media group to exchange insights on the ongoing inquiry. The group welcomed individuals willing to contribute their recollections, theories, or conjectures concerning the crime. To everyone's surprise, William Miller himself joined the group. He actively engaged by commenting on posts and divulging undisclosed details, showcasing an impressive familiarity with the location where the body was discovered. William also proposed his own theories about the perpetrator's identity, adamantly asserting the innocence of Casey and implicating the neighbors instead. Such conduct naturally raised suspicions. Why would someone who had lived on the other side of the world for many years suddenly become deeply involved in a long-ago tragedy? William's knowledge of the investigation was incredibly detailed. Eventually, a female geologist in the group discovered a family connection between William and Casey. This revelation shocked the community and made them see the mysterious Filipino man in a new light. The police were notified about the suspicious visitor once again. Investigators realized that William Miller might be more involved in the story than initially thought. The challenge was that the suspect was far away, thousands of miles from the crime scene. All they could do was hope for a miracle or a remarkable coincidence, and that miracle occurred in October 2020, 16 years after Rebecca Gold's murder. William Miller returned to the United States, flying to Kansas to visit his mother, who had recently moved there. Airport employees promptly identified him and notified the police of the arrival of the long-awaited guest. At last, the detectives had a chance to ask the man some questions. William Miller strolled calmly through the police station's corridors, attempting to maintain a neutral expression. Inside, conflicting emotions battled within him. He felt irritated by the obligatory visit, yet secretly thrilled that he finally had the chance to converse with the investigators. It had been 16 years since he last set foot in his homeland. Life had led him first to Equatorial Guinea, where he worked for an oil company, and then to the Philippines. William spoke about his wealth with undisguised pride. He said he had a huge farm, 12 hectares of land, a whole household with domestic animals. Along the way, William let slip that only his elder son spoke English, while his younger daughter knew only her mother's native language, Baya. Later, the conversation turned to the events of 16 years ago. The investigators tried to recreate the chronology of William's movements and activities during that period. He willingly shared his memories. His mother was just about to move from Arkansas to Texas, and William, as a loving son, volunteered to help. At that time, he just had a 10-day vacation, so he was able to drive a truck and personally supervise the process. Miller did not hide that he had met with his cousin Casey at the time. According to him, they were not close, but they crossed paths from time to time. They were relatives, after all. Sometimes, William would visit his brother's house, staying overnight if the opportunity presented itself, but he categorically denied seeing Casey on the eve of Rebecca's disappearance. The detectives waited for William to start talking about Rebecca himself, and their patience was rewarded. As if in passing, William let slip that he had once witnessed a quarrel between his cousin and his girlfriend. Allegedly, the conflict seemed quite serious to him and even scared him a little, so emotional were both lovers. After that, William reluctantly added that he never saw Rebecca again, either alive or dead. After all, until now, no one had said a word about Rebecca's death. Even more so, the investigators deliberately did not inform Miller that they had found a mutilated body so as not to reveal all their cards. And now, their suspect himself was talking about Rebecca's death. Although William Miller's words made it seem like he was backed into a corner, his careless comment about never seeing Rebecca dead raised suspicions with the police. Officially, news of Rebecca's body being found had not been made public. So how did William know about her death if he wasn't part of the crime? Yet, seasoned cops knew that a slip of the tongue wasn't sufficient for charges. They needed more concrete evidence, either physical or testimonial. Hence, to catch William off guard, the investigators displayed photos of his car from 2004. They then calmly informed him that blood traces matching Rebecca Gold's DNA were discovered on the gas pedal. The revelation made William visibly uneasy, causing him to fumble in his statements, offering conflicting. Initially, he mentioned seeing a suspicious individual by Casey's house, attributing the crime to this stranger. Later, he changed his narrative to witnessing a burglary and stumbling upon a bloody bed while trying to intervene. These odd and often nonsensical tales only deepened suspicions of William withholding crucial information. Eventually, William, driven to despair, stated that he was ready to tell the whole truth. And this truth turned out to be strikingly eerie. According to William, on the morning of September 20th, 2004, he went hunting. On the way, he decided to stop by his brother's house to borrow a mobile phone. Rebecca, who was inside at the time, sensed no danger and readily opened the door to Casey's relative. And here, William seemed to lose control. He pounced on Rebecca, knocked her down, and then began to beat her with his fists and improvised objects with all his might. Intoxicated with bloodlust, William grabbed a broken leg from the piano and began pounding the defenseless victim on the head with it. To finally make sure that Rebecca was dead, William strangled her with tights he found in the room. Everything that happened next, William recounted with embarrassing calmness, as if it were something mundane. He wrapped the bloody body in a suitcase, wiped the floor of blood, stuffed the bedding into the washing machine, turned the mattress over to hide the traces of the massacre, then got behind the wheel of a pickup truck, took the unattractive cargo out of town, and threw it into the nearest ravine. On the way, he even drove past the police station, a kind of cheeky mockery of law enforcement. Having gotten rid of the body, he returned home, threw away the suitcase and the murder weapon, and continued to live as if nothing had happened. The investigators were shocked by the chilling confession they heard. They struggled to hide their disgust as they wondered why a seemingly respectable family man would commit such a terrible crime. William insisted that he had no plans to harm Rebecca, and that there was no romantic or sexual involvement between them. He denied robbing her and claimed he had no personal issues with her. He explained that his actions were a sudden outburst of rage triggered by Rebecca's perceived vulnerability. According to him, Rebecca had not provoked him in any way. She was simply in the wrong place at the wrong time. The investigators were taken aback by these revelations. They realized they were not dealing with just a suspect, but a true psychopath, a calculated killer who had been waiting for the right moment for 16 years. It became clear why William had shown such a keen interest in the investigation and why he kept revisiting the gruesome details of the crime. It seemed that all this time he had been mentally reliving his actions, taking pride in what he had done. 2 years after the arrest of William Miller, in November 2022, the long-awaited court session took place. He appeared before a jury on charges of premeditated murder of Rebecca Gould. Investigators had failed to prove his involvement in other crimes. At least there was not enough evidence to bring formal charges. However, even one proven episode was more than enough for a severe sentence. Prosecutors insisted on life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. They argued that William was a non-human, a predator in human form who posed a direct threat to society. Allegedly, if he were free even for a day, he would undoubtedly go hunting again. The defense, in turn, insisted on recognizing the defendant as insane. The lawyers argued that their client was mentally ill and therefore could not be held responsible for his actions. They urged the jury to show mercy and give William a chance to be treated in an appropriate facility. In the end, after long debates and deliberations, the court found William guilty of first-degree premeditated murder. He was sentenced to 40 years in prison with the right to parole no earlier than 25 years. At the time of his possible release, he would be 72, a respectable age even for the United States with its high life expectancy. This verdict came as a real shock to many residents of Melbourne. Some were openly outraged by the excessive leniency of the punishment. In the opinion of the townsfolk, such a monster deserved life without any buts. Some thought that the investigation had made concessions and drained the case so as not to spoil the clearance rates. After all, Miller's conviction automatically meant the removal of all suspicion from Casey, and it was him that many townspeople considered the real killer. But despite all the skepticism and discontent, the fact remained: one of the loudest and most mysterious murders in the history of Melbourne had finally been solved. The real criminal, a serial killer and psychopath, ended up behind bars. Maybe not for life, but long enough to protect society from new victims. And although not all the mysteries were unraveled, at least Rebecca's relatives now knew the truth. They could finally exhale and begin to heal their emotional wounds. No less questions remained about Miller's other potential victims. Despite his confessions and promises to point to the graves, the case never reached real exhumation. No remains, no new evidence, at least officially. Does this mean that the maniac lied to gain the dubious fame of a legendary serial killer? Or maybe the police decided not to stir up long, dusty cases so as not to once again damage an already fragile reputation in the end. Strange as it may sound, many residents of Melbourne still consider William Miller an innocent victim. Allegedly, his confession is just a forced deception, an attempt to hide the real criminal. Allegedly, he took the blame for Casey, his own brother, and sacrificed his own freedom for the sake of his family. It sounds noble, but too far-fetched, too naive. However, can you be surprised when rumors and gossip intervene in the matter? Miller's sentence, though not ideal, was at least an attempt to put an end to this grim story. It proved that even the most cunning and agile criminals sooner or later get their just desserts, that the truth, no matter how you mask and muffle it, always comes to the surface, and that for the evil done you will always have to pay, if not before people, then at least before your own conscience. Several months had passed since William Miller was imprisoned. Life in Melbourne was slowly returning to its usual course. People worked, studied, loved, and raised children, and yet the invisible shadow of the past still hovered over the town like an echo of the former horror that had sunk so deeply into the collective memory. Rebecca Gould's family tried to move on. Her mother found the strength to visit her daughter's grave for the first time in many years. Her father finally unpacked her childhood toys and photo albums hidden in the attic for so long. The sisters, who had grown up and flown around the world, now called each other more often, as if trying to make up for lost time and share their pain. Casey, oddly enough, decided to stay in Melbourne. He felt he had to prove something, first of all to himself, to prove that he could build a new life despite the suffering and pain of loss he had experienced. Now, Casey rarely visited the old house. The walls held too many painful memories. But when the opportunity presented itself, he would bring white roses to the doorstep, the flowers that Rebecca loved so much. As for William Miller, he seemed to have come to terms with his fate. In prison, he behaved quietly, trying not to attract undue attention. He willingly communicated with the assigned psychologist, willingly took the prescribed medications, and yet occasionally a strange smile would flash across his face, as if a reflection of something dark long buried under a mask of decency. It's scary to even imagine what could be hiding behind that smile. This story, despite its tragedy, became another proof of the inevitability of justice. It may sometimes seem that evil is triumphant and criminals get away with it, but in reality, this is not the case. Sooner or later, retribution will overtake everyone who has crossed the line of humanity, and then there will be no turning back, only bitterness, loneliness, and the burden of guilt that will have to be carried until the end. I want to believe that the story of Rebecca Gould will serve as a warning to all of us, a reminder of how important it is to cherish each other, to value every moment lived next to loved ones, and most importantly, to always remain human no matter what happens and what trials fall to our lot. Because this is what distinguishes us from the likes of William Miller, the ability to empathize, love, and forgive. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Lauren Heike. Life can be unpredictable, filled with both joyous moments and heart-wrenching tragedies. The story of Lauren Heike, 29-year-old from Phoenix, Arizona, serves as a poignant reminder of how fragile our existence can be and how quickly everything can change. Lauren, a beautiful soul with captivating green eyes, had an unwavering faith in the goodness of others. Little did she know that her trust and openness would ultimately lead to her untimely demise. Lauren Heike was born on November 20, 1993, in Seattle, Washington, into a well-off family. Her father, Jeff, owned a plumbing manufacturing business, and her mother, Lana, worked in real estate. She was very close to her older brother, Ryan. Lauren received her secondary education at Central Kitsap High School in Silverdale, Washington. After graduation, she moved to Phoenix and enrolled at the Gary Manuel Leda Institute, where she studied to become a cosmetologist and skincare specialist. Lauren always took great care of herself and had a good understanding of cosmetics, so her education helped her develop her natural inclinations. She began her career at the age of 18 and built a successful path. Initially, she worked as a customer support representative for 5 years, starting in 2015. Lauren then became a leading manager at the renowned cosmetics company Benefit before working as a cosmetologist at a beauty salon for 9 months in October 2020. She later got a job as a manager at the Center for Aesthetic Medicine. She also planned to follow in her mother's footsteps and try her hand in the real estate field. At the time of the tragedy, Lauren was working full-time as an instructor at a golf club. She was never afraid of difficulties, was responsible, and easily found common ground with people. She was actively developing in the beauty industry, sports, and real estate. Lauren carefully monitored her physical fitness, regularly engaging in fitness activities, and generally led a healthy, active lifestyle. She had many friends and a supportive family. In addition to working in sports and meeting with friends, she adored traveling and hiking. It was because of the presence of picturesque trails that she loved Phoenix so much. Lauren often walked alone, listening to music and enjoying the fresh air, silence, and tranquility of nature. Her favorite route was a path in the northern part of the city, not far from her apartment, where there was almost never anyone around. Understandably, her parents were very concerned about her solitary walks in deserted places, but Lauren herself was convinced that nothing bad could happen to her. According to her family, Lauren had a kind of routine. She would wake up, drink coffee, chat with loved ones and friends, and then go for a walk. She did this every day because she believed that this way she would start the new day with positivity. Unfortunately, she did not realize that her trusting nature and carefree attitude could cause a fatal role. On April 28, 2023, Lauren's morning began as usual. She drank coffee, talked with family and friends on the phone, and went for her usual walk in the northern district of Phoenix, not far from her own apartment. The route passed through a picturesque trail in a calm, quiet, sparsely populated area, and took 15 to 30 minutes one way. The girl left the house at approximately 10:30 a.m. The last time surveillance cameras recorded her was at 10:52, when Lauren was calmly walking along the trail in the park. She was wearing a pink sports top, black leggings, and sneakers. She only had her phone and keys with her. No one saw her again. Lauren was supposed to show up for work at 11:30, but did not come and did not warn about her delay or absence. This was uncharacteristic for a very responsible girl. Colleagues started calling her, but to no avail. Lauren's phone was turned off. Worried friends began sending messages on social networks and calling each other, hoping that someone knew where Lauren was. But no one could say anything because no one had seen her after she left the house in the morning. Around 1 p.m., Lauren's parents, unable to reach her, arrived at her apartment hoping their daughter was unwell and had not gone to work. However, Lauren was not home, though her belongings were undisturbed and the doors locked. No signs of a break-in or struggle were evident. It appeared she had gone for a walk and not returned. Concerned, her family promptly contacted the police to report her missing. Law enforcement responded swiftly, but initial searches proved futile. The sunny day of April 28th, typical for the area, saw few visitors at the park where Lauren was last seen walking. Had someone been present during the attack, perhaps the tragedy could have been averted, but fate dictated otherwise. As hours passed with no word from Lauren, anxiety mounted among her loved ones. Despite extensive searches of the park and surrounding areas, no clues surfaced. Hoping she had simply wandered off or was delayed, family and friends reached out in vain. The next morning, April 29th, Around 11 a.m., the worst fears were realized when a passerby discovered Lauren's body. The woman promptly contacted the authorities, who found Lauren's body riddled with stab wounds, a short distance from the trail in the undergrowth. She lay face up, arms outstretched, clothes torn, blood everywhere. Forensic experts quickly began their investigation. The medical examiner later determined her death on April 28 around 11 a.m. was due to severe blood loss from 15 deep knife wounds, likely inflicted with a pocket knife. The fatal wound to her back suggested a prolonged attack, evidenced by wounds of varying depth and location on her body. Injuries on her hands indicated a struggle, with deep cuts on both sides as she tried to defend herself from the sharp knife. Despite her resistance, the assailant, aggressive and strong, overpowered her unexpectedly. Scratches on her back and torn clothing suggested a surprise attack from behind, knocking her down and repeatedly stabbing her. A footprint from a size 42 to 43 sneaker at the scene likely belonged to the attacker. Signs of an attempt to escape, crawl away, and hide were visible in the area, but unsuccessful. Traces of blood and remains of a struggle near a barbed wire fence showed her desperate efforts to evade the murderer. Her personal belongings, a phone and house keys, were found nearby. There were no wallet or other valuables on her, so the possibility of robbery was immediately dismissed. Lauren's phone was found to be broken. The last calls were made on the evening of April 27th. As no one had heard from her for over a day, forensic specialists conducted a thorough examination of the territory. They discovered an important detail a few meters from the crime scene. Among the branches lay a bloody pocket knife. Experts immediately suspected this to be the murder weapon. A detailed examination of the blade and handle revealed fingerprints and other DNA traces belonging to an unknown man. Hair and epithelium of the killer were also found at the crime scene. Lauren's body and all physical evidence were promptly sent for examination. Simultaneously, investigators reviewed surveillance camera footage. It was revealed that one of the cameras captured the moment Lauren entered the park at 10:52. She was walking alone, listening to music on her headphones. Nothing suspicious was noted. However, a minute later, the figure of a tall, thin man in dark clothes sprinted past the camera, trying to hide his face. Despite this, experts identified him as a young African-American man in a cap, matching the description of the individual found at the crime scene. Another camera positioned at the park's exit recorded the same man swiftly exiting around the corner at 10:59. He attempted to climb over the fence, but got snagged on his clothes, eventually jumping over and losing his cap. The suspect then disappeared in an unknown direction. These recordings provided the investigation with a crucial lead, offering a detailed description of the person to be located. It's notable that the unknown man's appearance in the park coincided with the time of Lauren's murder. The cameras captured the suspect immediately before and after the crime. A meticulous analysis of the footage showed that the suspect moved purposefully and quickly, appearing vigilant as if afraid of being detected. Secondly, he showed up in the park only 30 to 40 seconds after Lauren, clearly following her. Following the crime, he quickly ran away in the opposite direction from the park's entrance, climbing a fence to disappear rapidly. All of this supports the belief that the murder was planned in advance, indicating it may not have been his first crime. He acted swiftly and boldly, attempting to leave no trace. However, in the panic of the escape, he made some errors that led to him being captured partially on camera. The footage from the cameras was promptly shared with Lauren's relatives, but no one could identify him in the video. The shock and sorrow felt by everyone was palpable. Her relatives couldn't comprehend how someone could brutally take the life of their beloved, gentle girl. Lauren had no enemies, conflicts, valuables, or significant sums of money. Her lifestyle was not hazardous, dispelling notions of revenge or robbery. 1 week after the tragic event, the police held a press conference to share details about the evidence found. They asked the public for help in identifying the suspect. Lauren's father, with tears in his eyes, urged anyone with information to come forward. The family also offered a significant reward for any useful leads. The city was whirlwind Lauren's story, sparking a huge reaction. Social media was full of sharing information, search efforts, and volunteer work. At the same time, forensic investigations continued. DNA, fingerprints, and other biological evidence were carefully examined in the lab. Finally, experts struck gold. The suspect's genetic profile matched records in the police database. The system revealed the name, Zion William Teasley, a 22-year-old African-American with a history of criminality. Detectives swiftly delved into Zion's background, unearthing his challenging upbringing in a home marred by addiction and criminality since his youth. In 2020, he was convicted of a series of armed robberies. Zion spent almost a year in prison but was released early for good behavior. He was last arrested in January 2023 for a knife attack on a passerby. However, the victim then withdrew the statement, so Teasley got off with a suspended sentence. At the time of Lauren's murder, he was under police supervision and had to regularly check in at the precinct. The last such check took place on April 27th, the day before the tragedy in the park. With this new information, the detectives began to develop a plan to detain the suspect. They established round-the-clock surveillance on him and discovered that Zion was not working anywhere at that time, spending all his time at home and occasionally visiting some dubious individuals. Obtaining an arrest warrant, the capture group went to Zion Teasley's apartment. The door had to be broken down, but no one was inside. During the search, the police found a bucket of chlorine, gloves, and rags, indicating an attempt to destroy evidence, though he didn't have enough time for it. In Zion's room, they found a suitcase stuffed with clothes, a brand new passport in a different name, and bus tickets to Canada, suggesting a plan to flee the country. Investigators immediately suspected that Zion had found out about the search and was trying to evade justice. A large-scale special operation began with the focus on Zion Teasley being sent to all states. Border guards were alerted to apprehend the murder suspect. Patrols were deployed at railway stations, airports, and highways. Detectives traced the fugitive's phone calls and located him using signals from cell towers. Meanwhile, they also collected evidence, including witnesses who saw Zion Teasley following Lauren before her murder. A thorough investigation into Zion's history uncovered previous assaults on women, suggesting a history of violence. He was arrested for harassing a girl in a club. Prior to that, a girl he was dating wrote a statement accusing him of beating her. Although the case was closed due to lack of evidence, Zion was widely regarded as an extremely aggressive and unbalanced person who held contempt for women, considering them inferior. His social media posts were filled with derogatory language towards women, and there were also photos of knives resembling the murder weapon. Police suggested that Lauren might have been a random victim of Zion's violent tendencies. It was theorized that he spotted her on the street, stalked her, and then attacked her in a deserted place. Some speculated that he may have felt provoked by her attractiveness and apparent vulnerability, a common trigger for individuals with his mindset. Lauren's family, devastated by her senseless death, implored the public to eschew vigilante justice and allow the legal system to handle the case. After a 3-day search, Zion Teasley was apprehended in an abandoned garage on the city's outskirts. During his arrest, he resisted and injured a police officer. Subsequently, during questioning, he adamantly denied any involvement in the crime. However, when presented with surveillance footage from the park, he fell silent and requested legal representation. The prosecution swiftly charged Zion Teasley with intentional murder and kidnapping, citing substantial evidence such as video recordings, Lauren's belongings found in the garage, a knife, and DNA and fingerprints found at the crime scene. As a result, the court ordered that he be held in custody without the option for bail. The trial of Zion Teasley began on June 5, 2023, a highly publicized case in the state's history, capturing the attention of the entire nation. Journalists, activists, and concerned citizens gathered outside the courthouse, eager to observe the accused individual. Accompanied by tight security, Zion entered the courtroom in handcuffs wearing an orange prison outfit, seemingly indifferent. Lauren's family openly displayed their emotions. Her mother wept continuously, while her father glared angrily at the defendant. Friends of the victim, holding her pictures, also attended the proceedings. The prosecutor argued that Zion Teasley was a dangerous and calculated killer who posed a significant danger to society. He emphasized the audacious nature of the crime and the strong evidence against the defendant, portraying Zion as a misogynistic psychopath who took pleasure in causing harm to women. In contrast, Zion's lawyer sought to prove his client's innocence, questioning the presented evidence and suggesting the involvement of another individual in Lauren's death. The defense attorney advised the jury to make their decision based on facts rather than emotions or public opinion, highlighting Zion's difficult upbringing and the harsh treatment he endured in his family. Zion William Teasley currently faces charges of first-degree murder. In December 2023, the Maricopa County Prosecutor's Office pushed for the death penalty, the harshest punishment allowed by Arizona state law for such a serious crime. The Phoenix Police Department concluded their investigation into the case, with the suspect now awaiting trial. There is no information that would indicate that the attack on Lauren Ha was anything other than a random choice of a victim by the perpetrator. Zion Teasley himself does not admit his guilt in committing this brutal murder. He continues to be held in custody without the right to post bail. The trial of the accused is scheduled for October 2025. It is expected that this will be one of the most resonant trials in the history of the state of Arizona. The tragic death of Lauren Heike shook all of America and became a real shock for her family and friends. She, who loved life so much and believed in the goodness of people, became a victim of a cruel and senseless crime. This murder once again reminded society of the importance of public safety and timely response to alarming signals about the inadequate behavior of certain individuals. This story also showed how important the work of law enforcement agencies is, as they were able to promptly find and detain the suspect and gather the necessary evidence of his guilt. Ahead is the judicial review of this case, which should put the final point and determine the measure of responsibility of the murderer. Society hopes that justice will be fair and that the criminal will receive the most severe punishment. Most importantly, the memory of Lauren Heike should live in the hearts of all who knew and loved her. This girl will forever remain young, beautiful, kind, and sincere. Let her story be a warning to everyone. Value life, be careful, and do not be indifferent to those who are near. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Amber Rose. At the break of dawn, Lisa Ann, the dedicated mother, walked into her daughter Amber Rose's bedroom. To her surprise, Amber Rose appeared to be in a deep slumber, her face nestled under a pillow. Lisa gently nudged her, anticipating the usual sleepy protest, but instead, there was only silence. A peculiar dark stain on the pillow caught Lisa's eye, stark against the pristine fabric. With worry creeping in, she attributed it to a nosebleed, a sense of foreboding settling in her heart. Lisa raised the pillow, only to be confronted with a sight that would haunt her forever. Amber Rose lay motionless, a scene as shocking as it was unexpected. With a gaping wound on her neck, it was clear this was no ordinary nosebleed, but a heartbreaking nightmare turned reality. Lisa's agonized cry shattered the morning calm, tearing through the once serene household. Brendan McNee, Lisa's partner, raced in, his heart pounding in his chest. The sight of Amber Rose, so tranquil and pale, shook him to his very core. He reached for a pulse, confirming his worst dread. In the ensuing chaos, Jaden, Amber Rose's brother, phoned for an ambulance, plunging the peaceful morning into a terrifying ordeal. Amber Rose, a lively 16-year-old with aspirations and dreams, worked diligently at a local supermarket, saving every penny for her first car. Her dream was to become a dedicated police dog handler, a testament to her love for animals and her eagerness to serve her community. She had a profound love for art and the beach, often dedicating her free time to sketching the breathtaking landscapes of New Zealand. Amber Rose had faced adversity, leaving school a year earlier due to cyberbullying, but she had made peace with her tormentors. She was embracing life, her mother often remarked. The investigation into Amber Rose's tragic death led the authorities to her family's residence. Interviews with her relatives and her boyfriend marked the beginning. Jaden, Amber Rose's brother, recollected returning from work with his girlfriend around 12:15 a.m. The key was still in the lock and the kitchen lights were on. Assuming that his sister had left them on, he knocked on her door. Hearing no answer, he assumed she was asleep and retired to his room to indulge in video games, oblivious to the unfolding tragedy next door. Amber Rose's boyfriend, Kristen Clark, had been in contact with her on the fateful night. She had shared screenshots of a heated exchange with a 30-year-old doctor named Vinod Skantha. Concerned, Clark offered to pick her up, but Amber Rose declined. This refusal would be their final communication. Restless, Clark went to her house, tapped on her window in the early hours of February 3rd, and, receiving no response, messaged her once more. Amber Rose's sister, Chantel Rush, received a message from Amber Rose on the night of her passing, expressing anger. Chantel only saw the message the following morning and inquired, but no reply came. Amber Rose had already departed. An autopsy performed by pathologist Dr. Kate White unveiled the harrowing details of Amber Rose's final moments. She had suffered multiple wounds to her neck and throat, the most severe being a 110-millimeter gash on the left side of her neck. The injury had severed vital structures, including the carotid artery and other blood vessels, nearly severing the windpipe. It had also penetrated deeply enough to mark the vertebrae, split her left ear, and extend beyond the base of her skull. This fatal wound, estimated to be 5 to 6 centimeters deep at its maximum, resulted in Amber Rose's tragic demise due to severe blood loss. The assault had caused other injuries, including 2 stab wounds to the back of her neck. Most of the injuries were minor and would not have caused death, but the fatal wound suggested that the perpetrator had knowledge of what they were doing, indicating a deliberate act of violence. The autopsy report revealed chilling details about Amber Rose's last moments, causing shock among the community. The key questions that remained were why someone would want to kill Amber Rose in such a brutal way, and who was the man she was arguing with. The man in question was Dr. Vinod Skantha. A 30-year-old Amber Rose had met Skantha in mid-2017 through mutual friends when she was just 15 years old. Skantha was known to exclusively hang out with teenagers, often hosting parties at his house in Dunedin, where he provided alcohol and sometimes drugs to the teenage guests. Amber Rose had even discussed moving in with Skantha with her sister Chantel Rush. Chantel had questioned her sister about Skantha's intentions, finding it extremely odd that a 30-plus-year-old man would want teenagers moving in with him. But Amber Rose was not concerned. She saw Skantha as a father figure and was excited about the prospect of living with a doctor. She had even used Skantha's credit card to make an online purchase, brushing it off as just a few dollars that he wouldn't even notice. Chantel, however, was worried. In a later conversation, Amber Rose mentioned planning to go to Skantha's house with her mother to try to get money out of him, or she would go to the cops. Was she blackmailing him for money? As the police dug deeper into Skantha, a disturbing picture began to emerge. Skantha was a graduate of the University of Auckland Medical School and was working as a junior doctor at Dunedin Hospital at the time. However, his behavior had been deteriorating throughout 2017 as his alcohol consumption increased. He had even turned up to work intoxicated and treated a patient while under the influence. He had narrowly avoided being fired for poor performance in July 2017 by lying to his supervisors that his mother had died. Skantha's increasingly unpredictable behavior had led him into conflict with his friends. One friend, Connor, ended up in a fight with Skantha over how he was treating some women friends. Another friend was so angered by Skantha's derogatory comments about some women that he smashed Skantha's BMW wing mirror with a hammer. Amber Rose's conflict with Scantha began in January 2018 after a party at Scantha's home. Amber Rose woke up to find Scantha's hand down her pants and her top and bra removed. She felt she had been drugged, a chilling realization that marked the beginning of a horrifying ordeal. The evening of Amber Rose's murder was a night filled with intense emotions: rage, dread, and brutality. The confrontation between Amber Rose and Scantha ignited when Scantha accused her of misusing his credit card. In a retaliatory move, Amber Rose exposed an incident from January 2018, alleging that Scantha had assaulted her and menacing to reveal his actions to the authorities and his workplace. She took to Instagram at 11 p.m., sharing excerpts of Facebook chats with Scantha, where she accused him of arriving drunk at work, providing alcohol to minors, and engaging in inappropriate behavior with them. She urged him to grow up and made it clear that she would expose his deeds to the public. Messages highlighted his offers of money in exchange for sexual acts with her and other young individuals, stressing her intention to report him to the proper authorities. Despite Scantha's pleas to delete the post, Amber Rose stood firm. The conversation concluded at 11:25 p.m., with Amber Rose expressing her wishes for his conscience to trouble him and for guilt to haunt his nights. At 11:39 p.m., he phoned a friend in the presence of other teenagers, arranging a pickup. Surveillance footage captured Scantha's silver BMW heading towards Glen in Dunedin, where his friend awaited. The car reappeared on camera after the pickup, with the friend later describing Scantha as seemingly composed, lacking any signs of apprehension. Guided by the friend, Scantha drove to Amber Rose's residence, sketching out the house's layout on the car's dashboard. The friend disclosed the location of a spare house key hidden beneath a Buddha statue near the entrance. His narrative shifted during police interrogations and his subsequent testimony over a span of 3 days on the stand. Cloaked in dark attire and gloves, Scantha employed the spare key to gain entry into Amber Rose's home on Clariston Avenue. Making his way to her bedroom, he launched a vicious attack with a kitchen knife from his residence, fatally injuring her by severing her carotid artery and inflicting damage to her spine and windpipe in a single, lethal strike. Numerous other wounds were inflicted on her neck and throat. Upon exiting the residence, Scantha carried Amber Rose's phone, identification, and a blood-stained knife. Time was running out. Amber Rose's boyfriend, Kristen Clark, had arrived post-midnight and attempted to make contact, receiving no reply. Around 12:10 a.m., Amber Rose's brother, Jaden, and his partner returned from work. Had Scantha lingered a bit longer, he would have been spotted by 3 witnesses. Scantha took Amber Rose's phone, fearing that the incriminating conversations about his behavior could still lead to his career being destroyed, but he accidentally activated its camera function just after midnight as he attempted to smash it on the street outside her home. He disposed of her phone in a swamp at Blackhead Quarry, hoping to delete the exchanges between the pair. But the phone was found, reconstructed, and its data recovered, including the images taken accidentally. The forensic evidence also implicated Scantha, who had claimed that it was his teenage friend driving the vehicle. Splatters of Amber Rose's blood were found on the passenger side of the vehicle, thought to have gotten there. When Scantha removed his glove, traces of blood were additionally detected on his footwear, within a bag storing his garments, and on the side of his car where a passenger would sit. While testifying, his associate disclosed that Scantha instructed him to clean his vehicle and personal items. Nevertheless, the cleaning task was executed inadequately, as forensic examiners identified the presence of DNA belonging to Amber Rose at all those locations, some of which displayed a combination of DNA profiles from both Scantha and Amber Rose. Experts in forensic science pointed out that the blood observed on Scantha's shoes and the car's window had an exceedingly remote likelihood of originating from Amber Rose. Moreover, Amber Rose's blood was detected in a bag containing the defendant's attire, although no trace of the defendant's DNA was found in Amber Rose's living quarters, likely due to the usage of gloves. On the 4th of February, accompanied by the same companion, Scantha visited Amber Rose's mother. He presented her with flowers and a card to convey sympathies while conversing about Amber Rose's demise, speculating whether it was a case of suicide or if another individual, such as her stepfather, might have been implicated. Unbeknownst to him, an undercover law enforcement officer was present during their discussion. Subsequently, when dropping off his companion, Scantha made threats of harm towards him and his family if he revealed any information. However, the companion promptly contacted the authorities and confessed everything. Coincidentally, Scantha injured his hand while handling a sword and had to seek medical attention, but law enforcement intercepted him prior to his arrival at the hospital. During interrogation, Scantha refuted having a close relationship with Amber Rose, asserting that he solely acquainted her mother. He portrayed Amber Rose as merely a friend and narrated visiting her mother out of compassion upon learning of her demise. When questioned about the circumstances of Amber Rose's passing, he simulated ignorance and played down their prior interactions, citing a fallout due to her inebriated state and unfounded accusations against him on social media. He argued that she was too young for him, and he claimed he wasn't creepy because he wouldn't spend so much time with a 16-year-old. The detective informed him that they had gathered cell phone data and other evidence to track his movements on the night of the incident. Scantha then explained where he was the night Amber Rose died, but his explanation lacked clarity and detail. He mentioned remembering visiting the beach with a teenage friend, the same friend who had called the police and confessed everything. About 30 minutes into the interview, Scantha began interrogating the detective and asserting it was preposterous to suggest he would harm Amber Rose over silly Instagram posts. He claimed he wouldn't jeopardize his whole career and urged the detective to really think about this. Scantha then made another attempt, pointing the finger at his teenage friend, claiming his friend must have committed the crime and set him up. He continued to deny all involvement and told the detective he wouldn't be speaking anymore. Scantha was promptly arrested. Meanwhile, Lisa Ann was completely devastated by the loss of her daughter. People close to her said the crime had stolen her soul. She could not bear the pain and grief, and she committed suicide on 11th of June 2018, 4 months after Amber's death, compounding the tragedy that deeply affected an otherwise peaceful town. Skipping forward to the trial on November 4, 2019, the prosecution presented key evidence that Scantha and his friend visited Blackhead Quarry, where Scantha threw Amber Rose's cell phone into the water. However, it was retrieved after police drained the waters and located the phone where his friend said it was thrown. During his trial, a key witness recounted a disturbing encounter Amber Rose had with Scantha at his residence. Initially, he proposed a transaction of $2,000 for sexual favors, which escalated to a staggering $20,000 upon her refusal. She slapped him hastily and made her exit. Scantha's unsettling infatuation with Miss Rush was described by friends as creepy. However, the horror doesn't end there. It was revealed that Scantha had a history of offering teenage girls money in exchange for sex. The courtroom was left in shock as another witness shared her horrifying experience with Scantha. One night in 2017, she woke up to find herself scantily clad, with Scantha violating her personal space. An older woman was also present on the bed. When Scantha proposed a threesome, the witness declined and promptly left. On the 26th of November 2019, Scantha was unanimously found guilty by the jury of murder and 4 counts of threatening to kill the prosecutor's witness and their family. His demeanor remained devoid of any remorse or emotion upon hearing the verdict. Consequently, he received a life sentence with the possibility of parole after 19 years. Fast forward to the 14th of April in the year 2021, the New Zealand Court of Appeal rejected Scantha's appeal and upheld his conviction. On that very day, Scantha tragically took his own life while in custody, although the specifics surrounding his passing remain undisclosed. Brendan McNee, the partner of Lisa Rush and stepfather of Amber Rose Rush, who fell victim to the heinous actions of former physician Vened Scantha, expressed his relief at the news of Scantha's demise in prison. In memory of Amber Rose Rush, her loved ones gathered for a funeral at the Hope and Sons Chapel in South Dunedin. In a touching tribute to the departed teenager, several family members immortalized Amber's bird and flower design through tattoos. Additionally, a Give a Little crowdfunding page was initiated, amassing a total of $845 by the 14th of February 2018. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Amber Belkin. Amber Marie Belkin was born on December 6, 1981 in San Antonio. As an only child, her parents described her as energetic, ambitious, and responsible. For almost 3 years, Amber worked as a manager at the video game store. On January 29th, she was scheduled to work another shift. The store was set to open at 10 a.m., but Amber always arrived at 9 a.m. to prepare. Part of her routine involved taking the previous day's earnings from the safe and depositing them at the adjacent bank to avoid accumulating large sums of money in the store. On a January day, Amber arrived at work around 9 a.m. as usual. The store, part of a large international chain, was supposed to open at 10 a.m. However, by noon, Amber still hadn't opened the store or deposited the money, which raised concerns. In addition, she wasn't answering phone calls. The regional manager asked the manager of another San Antonio store, Mariano Rivera, to investigate why Amber hadn't deposited the money and why the store remained closed. When Rivera arrived, he saw a white car similar to Amber's parked outside. The store entrance was locked, and he couldn't see anyone inside. After knocking on the door without getting a response, he left. About 2 hours later, Rivera returned to check on the store again. This time, he spotted Amber's assistant, Brandon, through the window. Rivera knocked on the door, and Brandon let him in. Rivera asked Brandon if he had seen Amber, but Brandon said he hadn't. Brandon mentioned that he had just arrived and noticed something strange. Money, CDs, and work documents were scattered all over the floor. Rivera entered the back room and made a horrifying discovery. The lifeless body of Amber lay on the floor, face down, with a plastic bag over her head. Forensic experts later determined that the cause of her death was strangulation. Rivera immediately called 911, and the police soon cordoned off the store. Detectives found that Amber had not delivered money to the bank as she normally would, and the store's safe was empty, suggesting that a robbery had taken place and gone wrong. It's possible that the robbers stumbled upon Amber and decided to eliminate her as a witness. Based on Amber's schedule, the crime was determined to have occurred between 9 and 10 a.m. Unfortunately, the store lacked surveillance cameras, which could have greatly aided the investigation. As a result, the police had to rely on other clues. First, detectives interviewed Mariano Rivera and Brandon Beal, the two individuals who stumbled upon the body. They recounted how they arrived at the store and the circumstances surrounding their discovery of Amber's lifeless body. Store management reported to the authorities that the safe had been robbed of approximately $2,000 and several items were missing, including a few video game CDs and 3 or 4 PlayStation consoles. The total damages to the store amounted to $6,000. The police also questioned employees from neighboring establishments, but their efforts yielded no valuable information, as no one claimed to have seen or heard anything unusual. Meanwhile, as the police investigated the crime scene, news of the incident spread rapidly throughout San Antonio, and the parking lot in front of the store became flooded with media representatives. Amber's father, Randy Belkin, was watching the news when he heard about the incident. The address of the store where the crime occurred caught his attention, so he immediately got in his car and drove there. When he arrived, he spoke to a detective who broke the devastating news that the victim was his daughter. This event had a profound impact on Randy, dividing his life into 2 distinct periods, before and after. Soon, Amber's mother, Lelia, arrived at the store. She looked into her husband's eyes and understood the unthinkable. Their only child was gone. The detectives examined the crime scene and concluded that the criminal had escaped through the back door, which explained why no one had seen him. Their main finding was that the criminal must have been familiar with the store's schedule, knowing that the money was taken to the bank between 9 and 10 a.m., and that this particular store didn't have surveillance cameras. This level of knowledge suggested that the criminal was likely a former or current employee of the company. The initial suspect in Amber's disappearance was Brandon Beal, her store assistant. He was familiar with the store's operations and was already on the premises when a manager from another location arrived to check on Amber. Brandon had arrived at work to find the store still closed, despite it being several hours past the opening time. Using his key, he entered the store and relocked the door. Upon entering, he noticed signs of a struggle, but curiously, he didn't investigate the back room to check on Amber's whereabouts or well-being. Further investigation revealed that Amber, as the store manager, had been dissatisfied with Brandon's performance and wanted him fired. She had confided in her mother that Brandon had a short temper and struggled to fulfill his job responsibilities. The question detectives sought to answer was whether Brandon's disagreements with Amber could have driven him to commit a crime. After receiving a warrant, officers searched Brandon's car and home in an effort to locate the stolen CDs and PlayStation consoles from the store. However, they did not find any of the missing items. During the interrogation, Brandon explained that he arrived at the store around 2 p.m. and was surprised to find it still closed. He claimed that he let himself in using his key as he didn't think Amber could be inside. Upon seeing the mess, he assumed the store had been robbed and was shortly followed by the manager from another location. Brandon also admitted that he was unaware of Amber's intention to fire him, although he acknowledged that they often disagreed on certain issues. His girlfriend and parents corroborated his alibi for the morning of the crime, and after successfully passing a lie detector test, he was cleared as a suspect. Almost a month had passed since Amber's death, but the police still had no new leads. The detectives were worried that the case would go cold. Desperate for a breakthrough, Amber's parents reached out to the public through the media, pleading with anyone who knew anything about the incident to come forward. They offered a $100,000 reward for information leading to the arrest, with $95,000 of that amount provided by Amber's employer. Flyers with her picture were posted throughout San Antonio. Yet despite these efforts, there was no progress for the next 7 months. Then, suddenly, a police station received a crucial call. A man identifying himself as Joe told the detective handling Amber's case that he knew who was responsible for her murder. Joe claimed that 22-year-old Giovanni Rivera was the killer. When the detective asked why he thought so, Joe explained that he and Giovanni had worked with Amber at the same company. On the day of the crime, Giovanni had called him, asking if he wanted to take part in a robbery. Joe revealed that the targeted store, Choice, was no accident. Giovanni had chosen it because it lacked surveillance cameras. The detective asked Joe if he had accepted the offer and participated in the robbery, but Joe denied it. If everything said so far is true, the police's initial theory that the crime was committed by someone familiar with the store's schedule is likely correct. The detective asked Joe to come to the police station to make a formal statement, but Joe refused. However, 2 days later, Joe voluntarily went to the station and maintained his innocence in the robbery. During the questioning, Joe detailed how Giovanni Rivera first discussed robbing a store. Joe claimed that Giovanni never mentioned harming Amber. But about a month after Amber's death, which had received widespread media attention, Giovanni confessed to Joe that he was responsible for her death. Joe explained that he didn't immediately report Giovanni because he feared for his safety. The $100,000 reward for providing crucial information might have encouraged Joe to come forward sooner. Joe claimed that his growing sense of guilt eventually outweighed his fear, prompting him to contact the police. Although Joe's testimony alone wasn't enough to secure an arrest warrant for Giovanni Rivera, it led the detective to call Giovanni in for questioning. Interestingly, Giovanni Rivera and Mariano Rivera, the manager who discovered the body, are simply namesakes with no family connection. During a conversation with the detective, Rivera claimed that Joe was lying and asserted he was not involved in any criminal activity. However, at a certain point, he declined to answer further questions, and the police were forced to release him. As the officers pondered how to bring him to justice, Giovanni relocated to Laredo, Texas, with his family. Being a border city with Mexico, there was a significant risk that he would cross the border and disappear. In the absence of substantial evidence, detectives were unable to take any action, and the case remained stagnant for months. Fortunately, help arrived unexpectedly at the end of June 2008, nearly a year and a half after Amber's tragic death. It was Veronica, Giovanni's wife, who reached out to the police. In her distress call, she revealed that her husband had attacked her, threatening her and their kids with a pistol. Moreover, she courageously implicated Giovanni in Amber Belkin's murder. The detective in charge of the case traveled to Laredo to interview Veronica in person. During their meeting, Veronica shared her regret over marrying Giovanni, citing that she had made a poor decision. She had become pregnant with his child while still in school, and her family had pressured them into getting married. However, after the wedding, Giovanni's true nature unfolded. He transformed into a tyrant. Veronica alleged that if she refused his advances, he would restrain her with duct tape. She also disclosed that when Giovanni was first called to the police station, he returned home agitated and abruptly instructed her that they needed to relocate to Laredo. That same day, they hastily packed their essentials and left San Antonio behind. Veronica realized that if her husband was exonerated, they wouldn't have to relocate. One day, she mustered the courage to ask Giovanni directly if he was responsible for Amber Belkin's death, and to her horror, he confessed to taking Amber's life. Stunned, Veronica demanded to know why he did it. Giovanni's response was that their family desperately needed the money to pay the rent. When Veronica subsequently asked for a divorce, Giovanni became violent, forcing her into a car and driving her to a remote location. There, he pulled out a pistol and threatened her. He then coerced her into performing sexual acts against her will. Afterward, he removed her from the car, handed her the gun, and instructed her to kill him. Veronica categorically refused, prompting Giovanni to threaten retaliation against their children and relatives if she didn't comply. Veronica pleaded with Giovanni to consider the fate of their children if they were left parentless, and her words seemed to have an impact. That evening, they both returned home, but the next morning, Giovanni threatened to vanish. As soon as Veronica drove away, she contacted the police and reported her husband's admission of guilt. The authorities obtained an arrest warrant for Giovanni, but he managed to escape across the border into Mexico. It took 6 weeks of searching before he was finally apprehended at a relative's residence. The Mexican authorities agreed to hand him over to the U.S., but only on the condition that the prosecutors would not seek the death penalty. During questioning, Giovanni confessed to the murder of Amber Belkin. He explained that as soon as Amber opened the store door, he followed her, wearing gloves and a mask. Amber recognized him, and he told her he was in financial trouble and needed money. He forced her to open the safe, and when she attempted to reach the phone, he bound her hands with duct tape. Amber panicked, screaming, and Giovanni covered her mouth, asking her to remain quiet. Realizing he had gone too far, he placed a plastic bag over her head, asphyxiating her until she stopped breathing. He then stole the money, some CDs, and PlayStation consoles before driving away. After a prolonged and challenging process, the district attorney's office finally agreed to a plea bargain. In April 2010, Giovanni Rivera was subsequently sentenced to life in prison, with the stipulation that he must serve at least 30 years behind bars before he can be considered for parole. Amber's loved ones and friends vowed to do everything within their power to guarantee that he remains incarcerated for the rest of his life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Suzanne Morphew. Suzanne Morphew was born on April 11, 1971, to Jean and Adrian Alexandria, and grew up with two brothers, David and Andrew. Those who knew Suzanne described her as an amazing intellectual and thoughtful friend. In 1998, while in high school, Suzanne met her future husband, Barry Morphew, and they married 6 years later. Barry was a talented baseball player and was signed with the Toronto Blue Jays, while Suzanne pursued a degree in education at Purdue University. However, Barry's sports career was cut short due to a serious injury, and he went on to start a career in horticulture. Suzanne had been teaching for 4 years when Barry launched his landscape company, which gradually gained success over time. The couple had 2 children, Mallory and Macy. They seemed to have a picture-perfect life in Indiana until Suzanne was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. She bravely fought and beat cancer twice. In 2018, the Morphews moved to Mayville, Colorado for a fresh start and to be closer to their daughter Mallory, who was attending Western State University. They settled into a beautiful 7-acre property where Barry could hunt and continued to work as a contractor. He also volunteered as a fireman, while Suzanne retired from teaching and devoted herself to the church and took up sports. She had recently developed a passion for mountain biking. From the outside, the Morphews appeared to be the perfect family, but they had their share of problems, which would later come to light following the events of May 10, 2020. On May 10, 2020, the Mother's Day celebration at the Morphew residence started out differently than usual. Barry took they out of the house, leaving Suzanne alone. Barry claimed he had a landscaping appointment in Broomfield, a 3-hour drive from Mayville. Meanwhile, they went on a camping trip. Barry and they planned to return home that evening to celebrate Mother's Day with Suzanne. However, the planned celebration didn't happen that evening. They sent Suzanne a happy Mother's Day message, but she didn't respond. They found this unusual since she was very active on social media and would likely be on her phone, expecting to see photos from her best friend's daughter's wedding. After a few hours of no response, Mallory and Macy contacted their neighbor, Martin Ritter, and his wife, asking them to check on Suzanne. Mrs. Ritter visited the Morphew house around 4 to 4:30 p.m. and found it empty. She called Barry to explain the situation, and he told her to check for Suzanne's mountain bike. If it was missing, he instructed her to call the police, which is exactly what she did. The police arrived at the Morphew home, where Barry and his 2 daughters were desperate for news about Suzanne's whereabouts. After a few hours of searching, they found their first solid lead: Suzanne's mountain bike, abandoned off a steep ravine near her home. The discovery suggested that she might have had an accident, but there was no sign of a struggle, no skid marks, no damage to the bike, and no blood. The surrounding vegetation was undisturbed, leading investigators to conclude that the bike had been deliberately placed there. Barry's reaction to this news was peculiar. He proposed an unusual theory that a mountain lion was involved in Suzanne's disappearance. This was the first of many dubious explanations, conclusions, and accounts he would offer to investigators. Many people, including Suzanne's brother Andrew, found Barry's behavior strange. In a private conversation with YouTuber Tyson Draper, which was secretly recorded, Barry elaborated on his mountain lion theory. Notably, Barry did not participate in the search parties organized by Andrew, who didn't buy Barry's story about the bike ride and suspected that Suzanne might have gone missing on May 9th, not Mother's Day. Suspicion turned to Barry when Suzanne's helmet was discovered 1 mile from the Morphew home. Directly along the route, his truck's telemetry showed he had taken that morning. Although this might have been dismissed as a strange coincidence, the crucial factor was that it was in the opposite direction of the Broomfield construction site he was scheduled to visit that day. In his initial interview, Barry claimed to have woken up to his alarm clock around 4:30 a.m. and headed straight to Broomfield, but the telemetry data from his Ford F-350 revealed that he had driven 1 mile west before proceeding to the construction site. Barry offered an explanation for the data. He said he went elk scouting at 4:30 a.m. to track them later. He had a habit of sedating elk and selling their antlers. But when officers questioned how he spotted elk at 4:30 a.m. if he was waking up, Barry changed his story, saying he woke up on his own. Barry was asked about the day Suzanne disappeared and claimed it was one of the best days the couple had in a while. He said he worked with a coworker in Salida that morning, came back early, went for a hike with Suzanne, and then they grilled steak and were intimate. He claimed they went to bed together, suggesting it might have been the last time they saw each other. However, when the police investigated Barry, they discovered he had lied about almost everything that happened that night. The first sign of deception came when they examined Barry's phone and vehicle data on May 9, 2020. While Barry and Suzanne did spend the afternoon and evening together, the details didn't match Barry's story. Between 2:42 and 2:44 p.m., phone data showed erratic movements around the property, contradicting Barry's account. When questioned, he claimed he was likely hunting chipmunks with tranquilizers at 2:47 p.m. Barry then switched his phone to airplane mode, leaving it that way until 10:17 p.m. Even the steak dinner he claimed to have shared with his wife was doubted, as only one dirty dish was found, not two. Later that night, more strange events occurred on the property, and the police discovered some disturbing details when they examined the data. At 9:30 p.m., an hour after Barry said he went to sleep with his wife, his car was reversed, moving 96 feet backward from the driveway. It's possible that he loaded her body onto his truck at this time if he was guilty. Between 3:25 and 3:48 a.m., the records show that the door to his truck opened and closed over 80 times. Although this evidence is circumstantial, it suggests that Barry was hiding something from the police, and it prompted them to take a closer look at the events of May 10th. Barry was not scheduled to be in Broomfield that day, as their contract did not start until a week later, which meant there was no project for him to inspect. Barry claimed he only visited the Holiday Inn, the job site, a local store to buy granola and water, and briefly stopped at McDonald's to clean his windshield. However, surveillance footage obtained by the Colorado Bureau of Investigation contradicted his story. The footage showed Barry disposing of 5 trash bags near McDonald's and the Holiday Inn. When questioned about his actions, Barry gave a strange explanation, saying he wanted to clean his car without paying proper disposal fees. However, when officers inspected his car, Barry's story fell apart. Additionally, a coworker reported a strong smell of bleach and chlorine in Barry's hotel room the day after Suzanne's disappearance. Investigators discovered that Barry had changed his clothes multiple times throughout the day, which seemed suspicious. However, upon further investigation, they found no clear motive for any wrongdoing when they looked into Barry's and Suzanne's personal lives. Their daughter revealed that neither of them was as happy as Barry claimed, and text messages on Suzanne's phone and personal belongings showed that they were having severe marital problems. Suzanne was deeply unhappy in the marriage and had written notes expressing her fears that her husband would not consider divorce. She kept a list of grievances that suggested a pattern of physical abuse, including fearing being alone with him and worrying about his drinking. She was also suspicious of his repeated attempts to seize her phone and suspected he was unfaithful to her. When the police searched the Morphew house on May 20th, they found a pen that Suzanne had purchased to record her husband's alleged infidelity. Ironically, the recording actually captured her own affair with a man named Jeff, whom she had known since high school. The affair had allegedly been going on for about a year and a half, starting around 2018. Although Jeff seemed like an obvious suspect, the police were able to rule out his involvement. Investigators thought that Barry must have discovered Suzanne's affair, which was supported by a note she had written 2 days before her disappearance. In the note, Barry accused her of having a boyfriend. The spy pen was not the only crucial piece of evidence found in the Morphew house. The search also turned up a tranquilizer dart cap in the dryer, a spent bullet casing in the bedroom, a large crack in the doorframe, and what appeared to be the remains of Suzanne's journal in the fireplace. When combined with the telematic data, these findings suggested that Barry might have planned and carried out the murder of his wife, likely in the afternoon of May 9, 2020. The phone data from Suzanne's phone supported this theory, showing that she had sent 53 texts to her boyfriend and a selfie at around 2:10 p.m., but then stopped using her phone altogether. The public remained unaware that Barry was a suspect in his wife's disappearance for 2 weeks, until the police conducted a 2-day excavation at a construction site in Salida, one of Barry's job locations. In response, Barry released a bizarre video proclaiming his innocence to the public. It wasn't until May 5, 2021, almost a year into the investigation, that Barry was arrested. Although the evidence against Barry was largely circumstantial, the prosecution appeared confident in their case, given his changing stories, repeated lies, and clear motive. Barry faced charges of first-degree murder in connection with his wife's death, tampering with physical evidence, possession of a dangerous weapon, and attempting to influence a public servant. Furthermore, Barry was later charged with filing a fraudulent election ballot in his wife Suzanne's name. He claimed ignorance of the wrongdoing, stating that he thought the extra vote would be helpful to Trump. Barry pleaded guilty to this charge in August 2021 and paid a $600 fine. A preliminary hearing was held to determine whether Barry Morphew's case would proceed to trial, and it was during this hearing that most of the information about the case became publicly known. Over 4 days, the prosecution presented the evidence it had gathered, revealing its theory of what might have happened. According to the prosecution, Barry murdered his wife on May 9, 2020, dismembered her body in a hotel room, disposed of the tools used, and buried her in an unmarked grave. However, the defense strongly countered the prosecution's claims, highlighting several inconsistencies. They pointed out that cadaver dogs found no signs of human remains in Barry's car or the hotel room where he allegedly kept her body. They also hinted that the dart and bullet cover might have been planted and noted visual inconsistencies in the photos taken of the dryer. Furthermore, the defense argued that it would have been impossible for Barry to have used his dart gun in the alleged murder, since it was broken at the time. The defense team's key piece of exonerating evidence was the partial DNA found in Suzanne's Range Rover and on her bike helmet, which did not match Barry's DNA. The significance of this discovery lay in the fact that the DNA found in her car matched the DNA found in 3 unsolved sexual assault cases in Chicago and Arizona, thereby raising reasonable doubt about Barry's guilt. The question remains as to why this evidence was not presented earlier. The reason was that the CBI investigator responsible for collecting the evidence had gone on military leave before he could pursue the lead further. Furthermore, the defense team was not informed about the existence of these foreign DNA matches, and they only learned about it for the first time during the hearing. This means that the prosecution withheld crucial evidence that could have assisted the defense throughout the hearing. The defense claimed that the prosecution lacked sufficient evidence to convict Barry of killing his wife, given the presence of another suspect with a criminal record. They urged the judge to make a prompt ruling, but surprisingly, he delayed his decision, citing the significant time and resources invested in the case. It wasn't until September 7th that the judge ruled the case would proceed, and he set Barry's bail at $500,000. On September 20th, 2021, 9 days before the trial was scheduled to start, Barry was released from county jail, accompanied by his daughters. The prosecution requested that all charges against Barry be dropped without prejudice. This allows them to refile the case at a later time if new evidence emerges, as long as no reasonable doubt exists about Barry's involvement in the murder and any misconduct by the prosecution. Achieving a conviction would have been an uphill battle for the prosecution, given that they also missed several deadlines, resulting in sanctions that excluded 14 crucial witnesses from the trial. Following an investigation, Suzanne's remains were identified over 50 miles away from the projected search area, which was the mountains surrounding Barry's property, through her dental records and chemotherapy port. The discovery of her body has led people to question whether Barry can still be considered a suspect in the murder, despite the police being certain that his truck was not in Moffat on May 9th and 10th. Some people suggest that Barry might have had help disposing of the body, allowing him to make the trip to Moffat to bury the body and return without being traced. Getting a subpoena for his phone and car data for a longer period could potentially link him to where Suzanne's remains were found. However, based on the current evidence, Barry appears to be in the clear. The police and district attorney's office are continuing to investigate the case despite recent developments. The district attorney of the 12th Judicial District stated that they cannot comment on the case until more information becomes available, but they have offered their condolences to Suzanne's family. Barry's attorney, Iris E.Y. Yan, has spoken out publicly since the discovery of Suzanne's body, suggesting that it is possible she was a victim of a serial killer, given the location where her remains were found. Yan believes that Barry was wrongly accused by law enforcement and hopes that they will eventually acknowledge their mistake. Meanwhile, Barry has filed a $15 million lawsuit against the prosecutors, sheriff stations, and investigators, alleging that he was wrongly charged in connection with his wife's disappearance and death. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Matthew Phelps. Lauren and Matt Phelps first met in middle school, but they didn't become close friends back then. Years later, when they were both 26, Matt reached out to Lauren on Instagram, sparking an unexpected reconnection. Lauren accepted his request and started following him back. Curious, Matt checked out Lauren's page and found himself liking every post he saw. There was something about her that drew him in. As they started talking and texting daily, Lauren and Matt discovered they shared many common interests, including a love for Harry Potter, Star Wars, and other geeky stuff. Their conversations were filled with laughter and excitement, and their friendship quickly grew into something more. One of the things Lauren found particularly appealing about Matt was his strong faith. Having grown up in a Christian household, Lauren valued her relationship with God, and she was relieved to find that Matt felt the same way. Their shared beliefs and values brought her comfort and peace. To the outside world, Lauren and Matt seemed like the perfect couple, deeply in love and filled with joy and happiness. Everyone around them thought they had found their soulmates, and it was only a matter of time before Matt proposed to Lauren. However, Lauren's father was not convinced. He had always been protective of his daughter and was worried about her well-being and safety. The thought of her marrying someone he barely knew filled him with concern. After the engagement, their loved ones threw a party to celebrate the exciting news. Lauren was over the moon and wore a stunning white dress. But things took an unexpected turn when Matt's mother arrived, also wearing white. It was clear that she was not happy about her son's decision to marry Lauren, and her actions were seen as an apparent act of disrespect towards her. Lauren's frustration and disappointment boiled over after the engagement party, prompting her to confront Matt about his mother's behavior. When she approached him, Matt downplayed her concerns, explaining that he was raised by his grandparents, not his parents. He further revealed that he didn't have a great relationship with his mother and that her opinions held little significance for him. After getting engaged, Lauren and Matt decided to move to Raleigh, North Carolina in 2016. Despite the move, they remained committed to their Christian values and continued to live a life guided by their faith. Matt worked hard at an in-home care company, earning him the Employee of the Month award, which made Lauren extremely proud of his dedication. Lauren was also a hard worker, often taking on up to 4 part-time jobs in addition to her full-time job at a Fortune 500 company, all in an effort to support their life together. She even contributed to their financial stability by babysitting and working in the church nursery, taking care of children while their parents attended services. Moreover, Lauren had a side business selling candles, an entrepreneurial venture that allowed her to explore various opportunities and pursue her dream of owning her own business, which would give her financial freedom and the chance to create something meaningful. Every Tuesday, Lauren and Matt would visit her parents' house for a game night, an event they both eagerly anticipated. Matt would always arrive on time, enthusiastic about spending quality time with Lauren's family and building connections with them. In November 2016, Lauren and Matt tied the knot in a joyful wedding ceremony in Wake Forest, North Carolina. Their special day was filled with laughter and a touch of their shared love for all things nerdy. A memorable aspect of the wedding was the incorporation of their nerdy passions. The groomsmen wore dapper suits and carried lightsabers, transforming the celebration into a Star Wars-themed extravaganza. After Matt and Lauren got married, problems started to emerge in their relationship. Matt became uneasy about Lauren's close friendship with a male friend from their church. He suspected that the friend had romantic feelings for Lauren and thought their friendship was too intimate. Lauren tried to reassure Matt that she had no feelings for the man and was committed to their marriage. Matt's trust issues stemmed from his past experiences in his first marriage. He confided that his previous spouse had cheated on him while on a mission trip, and when she returned home, she told him she never loved him and was leaving him. The betrayal and abandonment had a lasting impact on Matt, leaving him deeply hurt and struggling to cope for a long time. As their marriage progressed, Matt's unhappiness grew. He transformed from a happy and content person to someone darker and more depressed. It was clear that something was troubling him deeply. Around this time, Matt's attitude towards his faith began to change. He became distant and unhappy about attending church services with Lauren, which was a significant concern for her since her faith was central to her life. Lauren felt frustrated that Matt seemed to dismiss everything she held dear. It was as if his love and appreciation had vanished, leaving a gaping hole in their relationship. Lauren yearned for a deeper emotional bond with her husband, founded on shared values and interests, but Matt appeared indifferent. Matt's newly developed laziness irritated Lauren, who was working multiple jobs to support them. His habit of finding a job, working briefly, and then suddenly quitting became a repetitive issue that caused Lauren immense frustration. What particularly upset her was that Matt was recklessly spending their money, leaving her struggling to replenish it. Lauren and Matt's friends and family tried to help him overcome his depression, but their efforts were met with indifference. Instead of seeking help or engaging in productive activities, Matt would spend hours on end playing video games, fixated on the TV screen. This behavior threatened their financial security and strained their relationship. Lauren sought support from her mother and sister due to Matt's unusual behavior. She confided in them about her exhaustion from working 4 jobs and her disappointment in coming home to a messy house, pending laundry, and unprepared meals. Meanwhile, Matt prioritized playing video games and spending their money, leaving Lauren feeling neglected and overwhelmed. Despite their growing distance and Matt's strange behavior, Lauren remained committed to her marriage and was determined to make it work. Her dedication was evident in her decision to stay by Matt's side despite their challenges. She believed their marriage was worth saving. As Lauren and Matt approached their 4-month wedding anniversary, their relationship was more strained than ever. Matt's decision to skip Tuesday night game night at Lauren's family house raised concerns. This intentional absence hurt Lauren and her family, who saw it as a disrespect towards them. Lauren felt distant from Matt and knew things needed to change. She had expressed her feelings and concerns, but it seemed Matt wasn't listening or didn't care. Lauren was worried that she and her husband Matt were growing apart, and she was determined not to let their love fade away. At this point, Lauren was desperate to salvage their marriage and was willing to try anything to make it succeed. When Matt suggested they take a road trip to Bowling Green, Kentucky, to visit his family, Lauren agreed, thinking that some quality time together could help repair their troubled relationship and bring back the closeness they once shared. When Lauren and Matt arrived in Bowling Green, Kentucky, they were greeted with an unexpected surprise. They had decided to take the trip with Matt's mother, her husband, and his parents. However, things didn't go as planned. Despite traveling together, Matt's mother still had not warmed up to Lauren and continued to give her a cold reception. Throughout the trip, Matt's mother maintained a frosty attitude, creating tension among the group. As the trip progressed, Matt's mother organized a family photo shoot and invited Lauren to join in. Lauren was thrilled to be included in an activity by her mother-in-law, hoping this would mark a turning point in their relationship. A few days before the photo shoot, Matt's mother sent Lauren a text, informing her that everyone would be wearing blue. Eager to follow the instructions, Lauren went out and bought 2 new blue outfits, one for herself and one for Matt. She was looking forward to wearing the outfit she had chosen and being part of the photo shoot. When Lauren and Matt arrived at the designated location, they found that everyone except themselves was wearing white. Confused and disappointed, Lauren asked Matt's mother for an explanation. However, instead of admitting her mistake, Matt's mother became upset with Lauren, making it seem as though Lauren had chosen to wear blue on purpose. Lauren tried to explain that she had followed the instructions and bought blue outfits accordingly, but Matt's mother continued to escalate the situation, eventually canceling the photo shoot. Upon their return from Bowling Green, Kentucky, Lauren and Matt's relationship continued to deteriorate. Matt began spending more time alone, writing in his journals, and displaying increasingly peculiar behavior. Lauren grew worried about these changes in Matt's demeanor. She started to suspect that Matt was stealing money from the fund they had set aside for their future trip to Disney World. Her suspicions deepened when she discovered that Matt might have taken money from her purse without her knowledge. Lauren frequently called her mother in tears, suspecting Matt of stealing from their vacation fund and her purse. In one of these conversations, Lauren confided in her mother that she only had enough money to cover the bills for a month and was unsure how they would cope afterwards. This realization filled Lauren with anxiety and fear, as she knew they were facing a significant financial crisis. When they started their life together, Lauren and Matt had $10,000 in savings, which they believed would provide a secure foundation for their future. However, just a year later, they found themselves struggling financially. Despite their initial optimism, their savings had dwindled significantly due to Matt's excessive spending. One evening, after a long day at work, Lauren texted Matt about their dinner plans. During their conversation, she mentioned that a female coworker had visited their house earlier that day, which sparked concern in Lauren, given the strained state of her marriage to Matt. Lauren couldn't help but wonder if she should be worried that a woman had sought out her husband at their home, and this unease grew as she thought about the truth behind Matt's first marriage. Her curiosity and desire to uncover the truth drove her to investigate further. Matt and his first wife, Brooke, had met in college and dated for 2 years before getting married. Although Brooke forgave Matt after he confessed to kissing another girl early in their relationship, she later revealed that he had cheated on her again right before their wedding. Despite this, Brooke forgave Matt again and married him. Matt and Brooke's marriage rapidly deteriorated after they tied the knot. A major point of contention was Matt's spending habits, which Brooke claimed were beyond their means. Meanwhile, she worked 40 hours a week to support them financially. The prolonged stress of their marriage took a significant toll on Matt and Brooke, causing them to become emotionally detached and slowly drift apart. Ultimately, their union ended in divorce. Lauren dropped a bombshell on her parents. It was Matt who had cheated in his first marriage. Her family was consumed by anger and a sense of betrayal, fearing what Lauren's fiercely protective father might do to Matt if they revealed the truth. So they kept the news to themselves, remaining silent. As Lauren and Matt's marriage continued to unravel, Lauren's frustration with her husband grew dramatically. The discovery of yet another betrayal left their already fragile trust in tatters. Just when Lauren thought she could start rebuilding her faith in their marriage, she discovered Matt had again broken her trust, this time over their finances. On their latest credit card statement, she found he had blown $11,200 on video games and another $100 on gift cards without her knowledge or consent. These reckless purchases only deepened her frustration and fueled her doubts about Matt's commitment to their marriage. Despite Matt's repeated betrayals, Lauren was resolute in saving her marriage. To her, divorce was unthinkable, and she was prepared to do whatever it took to make things work. To address Matt's extravagant spending, Lauren planned an intervention with her mother and sister to confront him and develop a budget plan together. At the intervention, Matt seemed receptive and genuinely willing to make amends and correct their financial issues. He appeared committed to making positive changes in their marriage. However, on August 31, 2017, the woman Matt used to work with unexpectedly showed up at their doorstep. Lauren was taken aback and upset. Matt told Lauren he was leaving with this woman, claiming she needed his help with something. Lauren was enraged and began sending frantic texts and calls, but Matt ignored her, refusing to respond. Lauren was furious and confided in her sister, venting her frustrations about Matt, whom she believed was ruining her life. She declared that their relationship was over and mentioned that she had already told Matt about her decision to end it on the early morning of September 1, 2017. Matt Phelps made a frantic 911 call, informing the dispatcher that he thought he had killed his wife. He explained that he had a dream, woke up and found her dead on the floor, with blood all over him and a bloody knife on the bed. Matt sounded terrified, panicked, and unsure of himself, his voice filled with shock and guilt as he spoke to the dispatcher. Matt explained that he suspected he might have killed his wife, attributing it to the quercetin cough and cold medicine he had taken, possibly in excess. He had taken the medication to relieve his symptoms and help him sleep better at night, as he knew it was effective. Quercetin is an over-the-counter medication typically used to alleviate common cold and flu symptoms, comprising a combination of antihistamines, decongestants, and pain relievers that ease nasal congestion, cough, and sore throat. However, it's notable that quercetin can cause side effects such as drowsiness, dizziness, and confusion, particularly when consumed in large quantities or combined with other medications. Matt had just called 911 to report that he had killed his wife when the Raleigh Police Department arrived at their home. The officers found him standing on the front steps and promptly took him into custody to ensure his safety and security. Upon entering the house, they were met with a horrifying scene in the master bedroom. Lauren's lifeless body was found curled up in the fetal position on the bedroom floor, surrounded by a gruesome scene of blood splattered all over the carpet, walls, comforter, and bed. The sheer amount of blood and the sight of Lauren's lifeless body created a deeply disturbing picture, one that would be unsettling even for the most experienced police officers. Crime scene investigators arrived at the house to start collecting evidence. They thoroughly examined every area, searching for clues to understand what happened that night. The team documented the scene, taking photos, collecting samples, and gathering physical items related to the crime. While investigators searched Matt and Lauren's house for evidence, police officers had the difficult task of informing Lauren's family of her death. After Lauren's sister heard the news that Laura had been killed by her husband, she was jolted awake by the sound of her mother's loud, horrified screams. Rushing downstairs, she reached the bottom to find police officers standing at the front door, confirming her worst fears: Laura was dead. At the police station, the officers questioned Matt about his role in the murder of his wife. However, Matt soon asked for an attorney, and the questioning stopped. Following his request, the police took Matt to the hospital to have a blood test, which would determine if he had used corisodine at the time of the murder. Following his blood test, Matt was taken into custody at the county jail, where he was formally charged with murder. In the aftermath of Matt's arrest, the police launched a thorough investigation into his journals and electronic devices, seeking any additional evidence that might shed light on his motivations for killing his wife. Officers found a disturbing pattern in Matthew's internet history before Lauren's death. He'd researched codeine and its mix with alcohol. They also discovered a secret Instagram account glorifying death, the devil, and American Psycho, with violent anti-Christian posts contradicting his aspiring pastor persona. Matt's toxicology report showed that he had a small amount of cold medication in his system, but not enough to cause hallucinations. This finding supported the idea that Matt was in control of his actions and not under the influence of any substances when Lauren died. Lauren's autopsy revealed that she was asleep on her side when Matt stabbed her. He initially stabbed her on her side, then rolled her over and stabbed her multiple times in the face. The autopsy also found that Lauren tried to fight back, with wounds on her arms suggesting she attempted to defend herself. In total, she suffered 123 stab wounds. On October 5, 2018, Matthew Phelps pleaded guilty to first-degree murder in the death of his wife Lauren. He was sentenced to life in prison without parole. During the sentencing hearing, Phelps apologized to his former in-laws, calling himself a monster and acknowledging that his actions were senseless and unjustified. Lauren's mother told the court that Lauren was beautiful inside and out, and that Matthew Phelps' actions had forever changed her life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jennifer Dulos. Jennifer Dulos was born on September 27, 1968, in New York City. Her parents were Hillard Farber, a banker, and Gloria Tenberg, a philanthropist. She had one sibling, a sister named Melissa Irene Farber. Jennifer attended Brown University, graduating in 1990, and later earned a master's degree in writing from the Tisch School of the Arts at New York University. Her uncle, Arthur Ortenberg, and his wife founded the fashion company Liz Claiborne Inc. Jennifer married Fotis Dulos in 2004. The couple had 5 children together, including 2 sets of twins and a daughter. Their children were all named after Greek saints. Jennifer and Fotis were married for 13 years until their relationship began to deteriorate in 2017. As time went on, Jennifer became increasingly afraid of her husband. Fotis Dulos was born on August 6, 1967, in Turkey and grew up in Athens, Greece. He moved to the United States in 1986 and attended Brown University, graduating in 1989. A few years later, Fotis earned a master's degree in finance from Columbia Business School. Before marrying Jennifer, Fotis was married to Hilary Vanessa Alama, a fellow Brown University student, from 2000 to 2004. He divorced Hilary in 2004 and then married Jennifer in September of the same year, just a month later. Jennifer loved her children deeply, and it was this love that made her sudden disappearance all the more suspicious to the police. They knew she would never abandon her kids intentionally. Months earlier, Jennifer had filed for divorce from her husband, Fotis, due to the increasingly violent nature of their marriage. She feared for her life and that of her children. The main reason for her seeking divorce was Fotis's violent behavior and his affair with his co-worker, Michelle Troconis, a Venezuelan national. Jennifer had hinted at her marital problems in a 2012 blog post, expressing her desire to become stronger and stand up for herself. 5 years later, she took the step of filing for divorce, citing Fotis's growing independence and his infidelity. Although the court denied her request for sole custody, it granted her and Fotis joint custody. Jennifer lived in fear, not just for herself, but especially for her children. She said that Fotis had a history of behaving irrationally, unsafely, and controlling her, including bullying and making threats. A very disturbing incident happened on June 3, 2017, when Fotis became violent after finding out that Jennifer had planned activities for their kids that Saturday morning. To escape, Jennifer rushed upstairs, but Fotis followed her, continuing to yell at her and physically intimidate her, even after she locked herself in a room. Jennifer saw the danger she was in with her husband. After filing for divorce, she admitted that she was terrified of Fotis and expected trouble. In May 2017, following her divorce filing, Jennifer accused Fotis of threatening to kidnap and harm their children if she didn't accept his terms in the divorce settlement. To make things worse, he bought a gun that same year. In 2018, during the hearing process, Jennifer requested emergency sole custody of her children due to Fotis' history of violating court orders. Consequently, the court granted her full physical custody, while both parents shared legal custody. Fotis was only permitted supervised visits and monitored phone calls. To ensure her safety, Jennifer and the children relocated to a rented house in New Canaan, 70 miles away from Fotis. Fotis had felt genuinely hurt by Jennifer's accusations. In an email sent to Jennifer in 2017, he expressed concern for their children's welfare. He acknowledged that their children needed both parents, not just one. He pleaded with Jennifer to reconsider their marriage for the sake of their children, suggesting they could work as partners and learn to tolerate each other. Fotis has denied the accusation made by Jennifer. In response, he has accused Jennifer of trying to turn their children against him. According to Fotis, Jennifer has called him a psychopath in front of the kids and told them that he doesn't care about them. He also alleges that Jennifer boasted about prolonging their divorce process for 2 years, supposedly so that she could get the mafia to attack him by breaking his legs with a baseball bat. Fotis further denied ever threatening to kidnap his children. While he admitted to purchasing a gun, he claimed it was solely for protecting his home. Fotis's arguments might have been considered credible if not for the subsequent event. Jennifer Dulos was last spotted on May 24, 2019, around 8:05 a.m. After dropping off her children at New Canaan County School, she returned home shortly. Concerned friends alerted the police to her disappearance. Jennifer had scheduled 2 doctor's appointments in New York City at 11 a.m. and 1 p.m. Her friends grew worried when she failed to show up, as she was known for never missing her appointments. It wasn't just her friends who noticed something was amiss. Her live-in nanny, Lauren Almeida, became worried when she arrived at Jennifer's New Canaan apartment around 11:30 a.m. and found the Range Rover in the garage. Jennifer had planned to use the Range Rover for her doctor's appointment, not the missing Chevrolet Suburban. Lauren Almeida waited until 7 p.m. to inform the police of Jennifer's disappearance. By then, it was clear that something was off, as Jennifer never stayed out late or left without telling anyone. After disturbing reports surfaced, police launched an investigation into Jennifer Dulos's disappearance. Detectives searched her New Canaan house, uncovering devastating evidence that would shatter the hearts of everyone who cared about her. In the garage, they found blood splatters on the floor and traces on one of the walls and the door. Moreover, they discovered blood traces on the exterior of the Range Rover. Inside the house, blood splatters were only found in the kitchen, and DNA analysis revealed a mixture of Jennifer's and her husband, Fotis Dulos's blood. Further investigation revealed that Fotis Doulos had been at Jennifer's apartment on the day she went missing. According to the police, Fotis arrived at Jennifer's home on a bike, as the tire tracks around the house were too small to belong to a car. He allegedly lay in wait for his wife until she returned from dropping their kids off at school, then shot her in cold blood. Afterwards, he attempted to clean up the crime scene and dispose of the evidence. At around 10:25 a.m., Jennifer's neighbor's CCTV footage showed a Chevrolet Suburban leaving her home, with police believing Fotis Doulos was behind the wheel. They suspected that after killing Jennifer, he hid her body and other evidence, including cleaning supplies, in the vehicle. The car was later abandoned about 3 miles from New Canaan, leading police to think Fotis was a ruthless killer due to his questionable behavior that day. Later, at approximately 7:30 p.m., footage captured Fotis Doulos and his girlfriend Michelle Troconis dumping trash in multiple bins along Avon Avenue in Hartford. What seemed like a normal act was actually suspicious, as they used 30 separate bins. Upon searching the bins, police found incriminating items, including cleaning products, blood-stained clothing, and used gloves. After testing these items, the results confirmed their suspicions. The blood matched Jennifer's, while Fotis's DNA was found on one of the gloves and a trash bin. Fotis Doulos's murder of his wife in cold blood was shocking, but what was even more surprising was that his girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, was an accomplice to the crime. Originally from Venezuela, Troconis was a multifaceted person, a mother, an avid horse rider, and a former ESPN reporter in South America. However, no one would have ever suspected her of being a cold-blooded criminal. Michelle Troconis began her romantic relationship with Fotis Doulos while he was still married to Jennifer Doulos. Her affair with Fotis contributed to the deterioration of his marriage. After Jennifer went missing, the police questioned Troconis. When asked about her whereabouts on the day Jennifer disappeared, Troconis claimed she had lunch with Fotis that afternoon and also stated that they had gone to one of his properties to clean it up in preparation for a meeting with a client. However, the police suspected that they had actually been cleaning up Jennifer Doulos's body. The police investigation uncovered additional videotapes that implicated Michelle Troconis in a more incriminating manner. These tapes ultimately revealed the details of how Fotis Doulos had committed such a heinous crime. It became clear that Fotis Doulos had meticulously planned his actions, and the police suspected that he did not act alone. On May 24, 2019, Fotis Doulos drove a Tacoma truck, which belonged to one of his employees, to New Canaan, Connecticut, without the owner's permission. A school bus captured video footage of the Tacoma truck speeding on the highway towards Waveney Park in New Canaan at 7:05 a.m. This was the same location where Jennifer's Chevrolet Suburban was later discovered. The police found a bicycle tire in the truck's boot, which supported their theory that Fotis Doulos had cycled the 3 miles from Waveney Park to Jennifer's apartment in New Canaan. The police believe that Fotis arrived at the apartment before Jennifer, attacked her in the garage as she returned, cleaned up the evidence, and then placed Jennifer's body in her Chevrolet Suburban. From there, he drove to Waveney Park, where he transferred the body to the Tacoma truck. As meticulously as Fotis tried to cover his tracks, he inadvertently left behind 2 crucial pieces of evidence, proving his presence in the New Canaan house: a DNA sample on the doorknob and a mixture of his and Jennifer's blood on the kitchen faucet. According to the police, Fotis spent hours cleaning the house, which is supported by the neighbors' surveillance footage showing Jennifer's Chevrolet Suburban leaving the house around 11 p.m. The police became even more convinced of Fotis Doulos's guilt when he made a suspicious move 5 days after his wife's disappearance. Without permission, Fotis took the Tacoma truck out again, and his destination ultimately incriminated him. He drove the truck directly to a local car wash and detail shop, where surveillance video captured a black SUV following closely behind him. The SUV's driver was identified as Michelle Troconis. In the footage, Fotis is seen dropping off the truck at the car wash, then getting into Trocan's SUV. The police were convinced that the couple's intent was to eliminate every trace of evidence from the vehicle. However, their quest was unsuccessful. The police discovered samples of Jennifer's DNA on the passenger seat of the car, which became a crucial piece of evidence. As a result, with the mounting evidence against him, Fotis Doulos became the prime suspect in Jennifer Doulos's disappearance on June 7, 2020. Consequently, he was arrested and charged with capital murder, and kidnapping. It is surprising that Fotis Doulos was not arrested for the murder and kidnapping of Jennifer Doulos until June 2020. Although he had been arrested earlier, it was not for murder. On June 1, 2019, Fotis Doulos and Michelle Troconis were arrested at a hotel in Connecticut, charged with hindering prosecution and tampering with evidence. At the time, the police lacked sufficient evidence to charge the couple with more serious crimes. Both Fotis and Michelle pleaded not guilty to the charges brought against them. Fotis Doulos has retained Norm Pat as his attorney. He firmly believed that his estranged wife, Jennifer Doulos, was no longer alive. Although initially released, Fotis and Troconis were rearrested in September 2019 on charges of tampering with evidence and hindering justice. However, in October 2019, Fotis appeared in court requesting a dismissal of the charges against him. The judge agreed to review the case and consider arguments from both the prosecution and defense. At the time, Jennifer and Fotis Doulos's children were living with their maternal grandmother, aged between 8 and 13 years old. The court granted the grandmother temporary custody of the children. Fotis Doulos's downfall occurred in 2020. In January of that year, he was arrested and charged with the capital murder of his ex-wife. At the same time, his girlfriend, Michelle Troconis, was arrested for conspiring to commit murder. After their arrests, Michelle Troconis distanced herself from Fotis. In a later interview, she confessed that she had made a grave mistake by trusting Fotis prior to their arrests in 2020. Troconis had allegedly left the $5 million Fotis Farmington home she shared with her daughter. Meanwhile, Kent Mawin, Fotis Doulos's former lawyer and friend, was arrested and charged with conspiracy to murder. The police took Mawin into custody at gunpoint, suspecting that he had helped Fotis and Troconis create a false alibi for the morning of Jennifer's disappearance. During this time, Mawin faced accusations of spousal rape from his estranged wife. After his arrest in connection to Jennifer Doulos's murder, his wife felt threatened and reported to the South Windsor Police Department that her husband planned to kill her with Fotis Doulos's help. The police investigation revealed that Mawin was a member of the East Granby Gun Club, a local hunting group. The authorities were informed that a human grave was spotted on a property linked to the club. A search of the property uncovered a suspicious shallow grave. Although no body was found, the police discovered 2 bags of lime and a blue tarp, leading them to believe that a body might have been removed from the site. The grave was discovered in August 2019 with the assistance of a canine. Despite the arrests, however, Jennifer's body was not found, leaving the family devastated. They had been looking forward to getting justice for their daughter, but the arrests did not bring them the closure they needed. In an interview, the family spokesman acknowledged that even if Jennifer's murderer was imprisoned, it would not bring her back, and therefore would not erase the pain in their hearts. Fotis Doulos had his bond set at $6 million on January 8, 2020, but was released on bail the next day. He was required to appear in court again on February 8, 2020. Michelle Troconis was also released on bail, while Douglas Mui's bond was initially set at $2 million before being reduced to over $200,000, allowing him to be released on bail on October 19, 2020. On January 28, 2020, Fotis Doulos's fear of facing the consequences of his actions led to a tragic event. He failed to appear in court for an emergency hearing, prompting the judge to issue an order for his arrest. When police arrived at his Farmington home, they found him unconscious in his car. It seemed that Fotis was unable to cope with the repercussions of his deeds and had attempted to take his own life. He had poisoned himself with carbon monoxide by rigging a vacuum cleaner to his SUV's exhaust pipe, piping it into the car's interior. The police managed to revive him, restoring a faint pulse through CPR. Fotis was rushed to Yukon Medical Center by ambulance and later transferred to Jacobi Medical Center in the Bronx for hyperbaric oxygen therapy. During his hospitalization, his children, who were living with their grandmother, visited their father for the first time since he was accused of murdering Jennifer. The police discovered a suicide note in Fotis's car in which he claimed he was not willing to spend even an hour in jail for something he insisted he knew nothing about. On Jan 30, 2020, Jacobi Medical Center confirmed Fotis's death. His girlfriend Anna Curry was with him the day before, but they drove to court separately. When Fotis missed his hearing, Curry was terrified and told his attorney, who tracked Fotis's GPS to his home. Curry suspected foul play and told the attorney to call 911. Murder charges against Fotis Dulos were dropped March 3, 2020, due to his death, but prosecutors have a year to refile if new evidence emerges. Dulos's attorney, Norm Pattis, claims someone framed his client planting evidence on his porch and wants to clear his name. Michelle Troconis, accused of conspiring to murder Jennifer Dulos, was on house arrest with no significant progress. Her lawyer confirmed the case was stalled, but she had a court date set for August 6, 2020, still pleading not guilty. Michelle Troconis slammed people who judged her without knowing her. She admitted people can be misjudged, but couldn't say if Fotis Dulos was capable of murder. However, she knew trusting him was a waste of time. In August 2021, police investigations led them to a Farmington house on Mountain Spring Road, which had a connection to Jennifer Dulos's husband. They decided to search the house to pursue old leads. To aid in the search, the police brought in Bob Perry, an expert in locating unmarked grave sites. They also deployed a septic tank and an excavator to maximize their chances of finding evidence. Despite their efforts, the police have yet to reveal any information about discovering Jennifer Dulos's body. Connecticut's 2021 domestic violence bill was inspired by Jennifer Dulos's story and named after her and Jennifer Magnano, another victim of domestic violence. The bill received near-unanimous Senate support and was signed into law by Governor Ned Lamont on June 28, 2021. Jennifer Dulos's family still mourns her loss. They miss her dearly, saying her bright personality affected even those who never met her. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Belinda Temple. The Temple family were highly respected in their community, especially David, who was a standout athlete. As captain of the KD high school football team, he led them to an undefeated season in 1986 as their star linebacker and defensive leader. His exceptional skills on the field earned him recognition far beyond his hometown, making him a local celebrity in Katy, with many seeking to befriend him. David's success prompted him to pursue higher education and athletics at Stephen F. Austin State University in the fall of 1990. The university offered him a full scholarship to play football, which he gladly accepted. During his time at the university, David's performance on the field was remarkable. His physical presence and relentless aggression earned him the nickname the Temple of Doom. David met Belinda Lucas, a physical education major and assistant with the football program while at university. Their connection was instant, and their friendship quickly turned into true love. Belinda, a charming blonde, captivated David with her beauty. From the start of their relationship, David was eager to spend all his time with her, often leaving heartfelt notes on her car windshield and surprising her with roses. After 11 months, David decided to take their relationship further. He asked Belinda's parents for their permission to marry her, which they happily granted due to his genuine character and respectful nature. David planned a romantic proposal, taking Belinda to the football field. As they walked to the 50-yard line, The atmosphere was filled with anticipation. David got down on one knee and asked Belinda to marry him. Overjoyed, Belinda agreed to be his wife in the fall of 1992. David and Belinda tied the knot in an intimate ceremony surrounded by their closest friends and family members. Following their wedding, the couple decided to make Katy, Texas, their home. Belinda pursued her passion for education by taking up a teaching position at Katy High School, which happened to be David's alma mater. Meanwhile, David found his calling as a coach and teacher at Hastings High School. As the years passed, David and Belinda's desire to start a family grew stronger. 3 years after their marriage, Belinda gave birth to their son, Evan. Becoming parents brought immense joy to both of them. According to those closest to David, he was an exemplary husband, always supportive of Belinda and ensuring she had everything she needed in all aspects of their life. Friends and acquaintances of the couple reported a different side to their marriage. They witnessed David's controlling behavior towards Belinda, including his degrading comments about her body and her parenting. He would often make jokes about her weight, specifically her big butt, and frequently called her fat and ugly. He also insulted her family, referring to them as crazy white trash. David actively worked to hinder Belinda and their son Evan from spending time with her family. David's frustration with Belinda's physical appearance, particularly after her pregnancy, was evident. He seemed displeased that she had let herself go and was unhappy with her weight gain. Despite his flaws, it was clear that David loved and adored their son Evan and was a devoted and caring father. David drifted from wife Belinda over time. At his high school reunion, he reconnected with an old flame and confessed to a fling. He started spending more time away, telling Belinda he was at happy hour with coaches, but secretly frequented dance clubs for casual encounters, leaving Belinda uneasy about their marriage. As Belinda spent time with her son, she couldn't shake off the feeling that something was wrong. She shared her suspicions with her friends, wondering if David might be having an affair. However, she was hesitant to believe her own thoughts, thinking there must be a logical reason for David's increased absence from home. When Belinda went through their credit card statements, she grew concerned as she noticed numerous charges from upscale nightclubs, making her question David's activities. Confronting him about these outings, he gave weak excuses, which Belinda reluctantly accepted. After this incident, David told Belinda he no longer wanted to share a credit card account with her and opened his own instead. This development further fueled Belinda's concerns, leaving her feeling disconnected from her husband. By the summer of 1998, Belinda and David's relationship was strained, and they frequently argued. They would often go long periods without speaking to each other, adding more stress to their relationship. One evening, Belinda decided to confront David about their issues. She asked him if he still loved her, but he gave a vague response, saying he wasn't sure. However, by the next morning, everything had changed. David had a change of heart and told Belinda he did love her. Belinda was overjoyed when she heard his words. By January 1999, David and Belinda's relationship appeared to have improved. Belinda was overjoyed to discover she was pregnant with their second child, a baby girl, and this news filled them with excitement. At 8 months pregnant, Belinda received a call on January 11, 1999, from Evan's daycare center, saying he had a fever and needed to be picked up at lunchtime. Belinda drove to the center, collected Evan, and took him home. Their son was 4 years old at the time. David arrived home about 30 minutes later, and Belinda had to leave for a meeting she couldn't miss. Belinda returned home from her meeting at around 3:45 p.m., clearly exhausted. David decided to take Evan out to give Belinda a break. They left the house at 4 p.m. and drove to a nearby park. However, they didn't stay there for long, and David decided to drive to a larger park several miles away. On his way home, David stopped at Brookshire Brothers to buy a drink for his son and some cat food. However, by the time he got to the store, it was already after 4:30 p.m., so he decided not to take Evan to the larger park. Instead, he headed back home. While driving home, David decided to make a quick stop at Home Depot to buy brackets for the baby's nursery shelving. The store's CCTV cameras captured David and his son entering the store. David arrived home with Evan at 5:30 p.m. As he approached the back door, he noticed it was partially open and there was glass everywhere. This immediately raised his suspicions, and he suspected that the house had been robbed. Thinking quickly, David picked up his son and ran to the neighbor's house, banging on their front door and shouting to let him in. The neighbor, hearing the commotion, quickly ran to the front door. David handed his son over to the neighbor and asked him to call 911 urgently, explaining that it looked like his house had been burglarized. Worried about his pregnant wife, David left his son with the neighbor and rushed back to his home. As he rushed inside, he shouted Belinda's name, his voice filled with concern. He ran up the stairs to the master bedroom, where he found Belinda lying in the closet, covered in blood. After David found Belinda's body, he phoned the police. 2 officers from the Harris County Constable's office rushed to the scene in response to 911 calls reporting a shooting. En route, they learned that someone had been shot. When they arrived, they were blocked by David and Belinda's dog, Shaka, who was barking and growling fiercely, preventing them from entering. Just as the officers were about to act, David emerged from the backyard. He calmly and firmly told the officers that his wife Belinda had been shot and was dead inside. The officers ordered David to control his dog before they could enter. David complied, putting the dog in the garage. David was placed in a patrol vehicle, and medical personnel and additional officers arrived. However, David became agitated in the patrol car. The officers explained that they needed to take him to the police station for questioning about his wife Belinda's death. During the interview, David discussed the events leading up to his discovery of his wife's lifeless body in the closet. However, the detectives noted that David became irritated and aggressive, refusing to maintain eye contact and exhibiting restless behavior, such as shaking his body and bouncing in his chair as he spoke. After 3.5 hours of questioning, the detectives remained uncertain whether David was a suspect in his wife's murder, as his responses were unclear and he was uncooperative, making it impossible to rule him out as a suspect. Upon arriving at the crime scene, investigators were met with a horrific sight. Belinda was found lying face down in the master bedroom closet, having suffered a gunshot wound to the back of her head. Initially, the severity of the injury was not apparent due to her long hair covering the affected area. One detective at the scene believed Belinda may have been kneeling when she was shot. The clothes in the closet were splattered with Belinda's blood and brain matter. Belinda was found fully clothed in jeans and a sweater, with her shoes, watch, bracelet, necklace, and rings still on. An autopsy was performed on her body on January 12, 1999, revealing that she had been fatally shot by a 12-gauge shotgun, which fractured her skull. The medical examiner concluded that Belinda's death occurred on January 11th, although the exact time of death could not be pinpointed due to the body's advanced state of lividity by the time it was removed from the crime scene. Additionally, the autopsy revealed that Belinda's unborn daughter would have also died as a result of the gunshot wound to her head, although the death would not have been instantaneous. An investigation of David and Belinda's home uncovered evidence that the shooter had entered through the back patio door, which had a broken panel of glass. However, the pattern of the broken glass suggested that the window was broken while the door was already open, raising suspicions about the circumstances of the break-in. The investigators' analysis led them to conclude that if the back door had been closed when the glass was broken, they would have expected the glass fragments to be scattered closer to the couch. However, the fact that the glass fragments were found in the living room suggests an alternative scenario. It raises questions about the intruder's intentions. Why would they break the glass of an already unlocked and open door when drawers were pulled out and some items were turned over in the home, if their goal was to gain entry. After a thorough investigation, it was found that nothing of value was missing. Belinda still had all her jewelry on, indicating that she was not targeted for her possessions. Moreover, David's gold championship high school football ring was left in plain sight on the dresser, and the television was still plugged in, contradicting the notion of a robbery. Given these observations, detectives initially thought the murder of Belinda was staged to look like a robbery. But after further investigation, they realized the true motive was to specifically target and kill Belinda and her unborn child. The break-in was solely to execute Belinda and her unborn daughter. Detectives checked David's alibi and reviewed security footage from Brookshire and Home Depot, which confirmed he was at both places when Belinda was likely killed. As a result, detectives temporarily ruled out David as a suspect and focused on other leads in his wife's murder. When police initially questioned David on the night of Belinda's murder, he claimed to have no idea who might have wanted to harm his wife. However, after a few days of investigation and careful thought, David told the detectives that one person came to mind who might have had a motive to harm Belinda, their 16-year-old neighbor, Riley Sanders. Riley was both a neighbor and a student of Belinda's at their local high school. Because of his frequent absences from her class, Belinda had met with Riley's parents several weeks before her murder to discuss the issue, and as a result, they had disciplined him. Moreover, Belinda had also confronted Riley's parents after he left beer cans in her backyard. The investigation revealed that Riley had access to his father's 12-gauge shotgun, which was the same weapon used to murder Belinda. Furthermore, the detectives discovered that a group of Riley's friends had been involved in a robbery several weeks earlier, during which several shotguns were stolen. During his interviews with the detectives about Belinda's murder, Riley told them what he did that day, saying he was in school. But when the detectives checked his attendance records, they found out he had skipped class in the middle of the day. This difference in what he said and what really happened made the detectives suspicious, and they started looking into whether Riley was involved in Belinda's murder. When they showed him the evidence, Riley agreed to take a lie detector test, but he failed it. Even so, Riley still said he didn't do it and didn't have any bad feelings towards Belinda. Instead, he said that on the day of Belinda's murder, he had skipped school with a friend, spent the day smoking marijuana, and then went to a few friends' houses. He fell asleep on his couch and didn't wake up until around 6 p.m. when he saw the police tape outside Belinda and David's home. While David suspected that his neighbor Riley was responsible for his wife's murder, the detectives couldn't find any concrete proof to link Riley to the crime. In fact, they confirmed Riley's alibi by interviewing his friends, which raised questions about David's theory. The detectives did consider the possibility that Riley might have killed Belinda and her unborn baby, but they kept their attention on David, Belinda's husband, as the main suspect in the investigation. During their inquiry, the detectives discovered that David was close to a colleague, Heather Scott, a teacher at his high school. David admitted to the detectives that he and Heather had exchanged flirtatious emails and had gone on happy hour outings together, but he claimed their relationship was purely platonic. The detectives questioned Heather multiple times. In their first interview, Heather said she and David had never been alone together, but described their interactions as casual and romantic. This raised suspicions with the detectives. After consulting a lawyer, Heather gave a second statement. In this statement, she revealed that her relationship with David was more significant than she initially claimed. She said they spent New Year's Eve together at her house and had intimate relations. When the detectives asked David about the alleged New Year's Eve encounter with Heather, his co-worker, David admitted it, rather than denying it to protect his pregnant wife, Belinda. David insisted Heather meant nothing to him, saying their connection was purely physical and that he enjoyed the attention. David claimed he truly loved Belinda and would do anything for her. He admitted hurting Belinda by having an affair, but denied physically harming her. 3 months after Belinda's murder, a grand jury gathered and decided not to indict Riley Sanders or David Temple for her murder. Despite this, detectives remained convinced of David's guilt, but they lacked sufficient evidence to link him to the crime. Over the next few years, the investigation into Belinda's murder stagnated, and the case remained unsolved. David moved on with his life, remarrying to Heather Scott. Although David was never charged with a crime related to Belinda's murder, her family remained convinced of his guilt. They made efforts to keep Belinda's memory alive, including erecting a giant billboard over a busy highway and bringing news crews to her gravesite to raise awareness about her case. However, despite their efforts, nothing seemed to change and the tip lines fell silent, with leads drying up. It seemed Belinda's murder would remain unsolved. But everything changed in November 2004 when Scott Peterson was convicted of murdering his pregnant wife Lacey in California, more than 5 years after Belinda's death. This conviction sparked renewed interest in Belinda's case, as prosecutors in Katy, Texas, believed there were numerous similarities between Lacey Peterson's murder and Belinda Temple's. The state had previously secured a guilty verdict against Scott without relying on forensic evidence. Although Texas prosecutors believed David was responsible for Belinda's death, they lacked physical evidence linking him to the crime. The prosecution used Scott's conviction as a precedent to re-examine Belinda's case, aiming to find sufficient evidence to charge David with murder. According to the prosecution's theory, Belinda returned home on January 11, 1999, where David lay in wait, armed with a 12-gauge shotgun. They alleged that David confronted Belinda, forcing her upstairs into a closet where he shot her fatally in the head. After the homicide, the prosecution believed David staged the scene to look like a botched burglary, took his son, and drove around town to create an alibi, which was captured on 2 security cameras. On November 30, 2004, David Temple was arrested and charged with the murder of his wife Belinda 6 years after her death. Despite the arrest, the case was delayed for 3 years before going to trial. During this time, Heather was not charged with any crime related to Belinda's murder, and no evidence suggested she had prior knowledge of David's involvement. In 2007, David's trial began, and his defense team claimed that his 16-year-old neighbor, Riley Sanders, was responsible for the crime. However, the jury found David guilty after just 8 hours of deliberation and sentenced him to life in prison. But in 2016, the conviction was overturned due to the prosecution's failure to disclose crucial evidence. This led to a new trial in 2019, where David was again found guilty of murdering Belinda. Although the jury delivered a guilty verdict, the judge declared a mistrial because the jury could not agree on a sentence. The resentencing hearing was delayed, but it finally took place in 2023. After a few hours of deliberation, the jury found David guilty and sentenced him to life in prison.